It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Rene Ritchie are here, and we're joined by Rich Siegel of Bare Bones Software to talk about WWDC. Man, Apple had a ton to talk about. We're going to get to as much as we can, including the new Apple file system. I think you'll be interested in that. And what is this new privacy system, differential privacy that Apple's talking about? It's all coming up next. MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 511, recorded Tuesday, June 14th, 2016. WWDC Deconstructed. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Trunk Club. Get clothes that fit and look amazing without ever stepping into a store again. Trunk Club will help you create the wardrobe you've always dreamed of with your own personal stylist. Go to trunkclub.com/MacBreak and join Trunk Club today. And by Squarespace. Squarespace is the simplest way to create a beautiful website or cover page for your portfolio, business, or online store. Enter the offer code MacBreak and get 10% off. And by Gazelle, the online marketplace for buying and selling used gadgets. Shop from a variety of certified pre-owned electronics or trade one in for cash. Give new life to a used device at gazelle.com today. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news. And this week, there's a lot of Apple news. Andy Ihnatko and I and Megan Maroney got up early, well, not for you so early, yesterday. Yeah, for you too. And watched the keynote at WWDC. Rene Ritchie's actually there, was at the keynote. Hello, Rene.
Hi, Leo. How are you?
Looks like you're at the W, I'm going to guess.
I'm close. I'm at Marriott.
Marriott, up the street. Yep. And also joining us from his evil genius space station, Rich Siegel of Bare Bones Software. And he's joined today by a evolved dinosaur named...
This is Bruno.
Bruno. Hello, Bruno.
Hello, Bruno.
Pretty bird. There's more than one, though, because Bruno doesn't move. His lips, either that or Bruno's ventriloquist. His lips aren't moving, but I do hear song.
One of his little friends is about 6 feet away, wondering where he is.
Jealous. We like having Rich on as often as possible, but especially after or during a WWDC, because as one of the longest-standing Mac developers, one of the best Mac developers out there, he certainly has some standing to talk about any announcements at WWDC. Boy, it was a jam-packed event. But Rene, you were absolutely right, and I'm gonna guess you got a late-night phone call last week from somebody in Cupertino saying, "Ixnay on the monitor with GPS, eh?"
No, like I ask around, like some of the stuff is just logical. Like there's certain things, like when you hear a rumor like iMessage for Android, and you figure, well, Apple's not historically great at cross-platform or services, and having to support an extra billion users on current iTunes, like iMessage infrastructure, does that sound more likely or less likely? And another is just like you start hearing early on what's happening, what's not happening, and then when you see these rumors and you know that there's nobody working on that stuff, it
seems fairly clear that there would be no hardware announcements.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been. They've done it in the past. It's just this time those stars did not align.
You know, and I don't mean to impugn anybody, but I just figured, well, Apple probably went out to a few blogs and said, hey, just so you know, because they wanted to lower expectations because they were afraid people would be disappointed who were reading these rumors about new MacBook Pros and so forth.
Or not. It's sort of like this expectational debt where if you hear Apple's going to be doing all these wonderful things like GPU monitors and new MacBooks with OLED and iMessage for Android, and then it doesn't happen, nobody blames the people who wrote the rumors. They blame Apple.
Right.
And they say it was boring. Or Apple can't innovate,
or better yet, you defend yourself by starting a counter rumor that I've heard that the reason why the new MacBook that was ready to ship as of last week, they finally found a show-stopping ROM problem, and that's why getting into the rumor game that's a mug's game. You're well away from it.
But I would like to ask. I don't know where these rumors came from, but and it's fine that they didn't announce it at at WWDC, but I would like to see some refreshes on some of the Macintosh hardware. I feel.
Oh yeah, you absolutely will. It's just, again, like WWDC is a fixed event. They schedule a year in advance, and they have to have things that are, especially if it's something new and cool, they want to demonstrate it, and it has to be far enough along with that demonstration. And it was an hour and 50 minutes without new MacBooks, without the App Store stuff, without any dad jokes, without any SNL skits, without any band at the end.
no new store openings. No, here's how well we're doing in China. Here's how many watches.
Wow, you're right. They kicked right into it, didn't they?
And there was no Phil Schiller.
And no shill filler.
No shill filler.
Yeah.
Either.
That's unkind.
I mean, well, he tends to do hardware.
Apple knows what they're doing. Apple knows what they're doing for huge amounts of time in advance. It was a little bit surprising to see them not mention any new hardware, but clearly they're saving it up for some subsequent event. Maybe they'll announce something at the end of the summer or in July in time for back to school buying.
Yeah, we saw last year. I mean, last year they were going to have Apple TV, and that didn't work out. So then we had, Apple Music taking up a lot longer than it might have originally been intended to. So these things are sometimes moving target, or the target is stationary, and it's the arrow that has to move.
Yeah, right. And sometimes you have things like, for instance, a couple of years ago they showed off the new Mac Pro without shipping it, and that's because they had there were variables that prevented them from shipping in the summer, but they knew there were no variables on a later ship date, so they knew they could safely do it. Now it doesn't matter if they quote miss a ship date, internal ship date by 3 weeks, because there never was a ship date on a new Macintosh.
Yeah.
Agreed, and it's an interesting footnote because the Mac Pro that they announced in June was supposed to ship they took orders for that at the end of that year. But it wasn't until I think it was March of the following year that it actually rolled out of the warehouse. That was a little bit strange, that whole thing with the new Mac Pro. And I have never seen anything like it before or since.
Remember, Phil Schiller said, "Can't innovate my ass," and I think that there might have been some pressure to show that they had something.
I think you're right. I think they showed it early rather than shipped it late.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true that his ass could not be innovated upon even more. as the trousers he wore in 2014.
It's an iterative ass.
This is the part where somebody could say Phil Schiller's ass is state of the art, but that's not going to be me.
You may not like his ass today, but what you have to understand is that Apple is planning for the ass that we'll all be using in 2019.
This is rapidly devolving into Silicon Valley mode.
You're talking to three people who are deeply sleep deprived for very different reasons from WWDC. This is just water, but it could be a tumbler of whiskey.
Was the event wasn't last night? The Beard Bash wasn't last night, was it, Rene?
Yes, it was.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Oh, I was doing media hits since 5:30 this morning, Leo. I'm fine.
Oh, really? Were you? Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That's what DubDub is like. I mean, we did the keynote, and then there was a short break, and we did a podcast in the middle. Then there was State of the Union, which is, if people aren't familiar with that, that's the developer keynote after the keynote. And then the Apple Design Awards are right after that, and then we rolled into the Beer Bash.
Holy cow. How late were you up on the Beer Bash?
We finished around midnight local.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Jim played. There were two bands, and in the middle, Jim got up and did some Guns N' Roses and some AC/DC, which was really nice.
Good for him.
He is very talented.
Yeah. Yeah, he's played at Yosemite both years, and it's like he's the person who is sitting quietly in a chair but playing the most amazing riffs, which is more impressive than being the Pete Townsend who is just like jumping up on stage and windmilling. It's like, oh goodness gracious, what is he? You can't read Jim's stuff and think that he's wasting his time in tech journalism, but then you hear him play his guitar. I think he's wasting his time in tech journalism.
Is it fair to say he shreds?
Yes.
He shreds, he knots, he unguents.
I think the beard actually picks up a couple extra non-human chords. It's remarkable.
I've always felt like maybe he had sort of a Turk sort of thing going in, where they had like that little chess player inside the machine. I think he has like a little tiny like Eric Clapton clone inside his beard.
Well, congratulations on a successful Beard Bash.
We had about 700 people. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sellout. Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
In the best way, sellout, not the bad way.
No, and everyone needed it because it was a long and fun day, and everyone got a chance to just relax and enjoy a Heineken and party.
Well, before we dig into the details, and there's a lot to talk about, including a new file system, which I am very intrigued about. Wait a minute. My phone seems to have started playing music for reasons I don't. There we go. Stop it. Thank you. But I'd like to get you kind of your general overall a sense of it. And let's start with you, Rene, because you're actually there. Good, bad, indifferent?
No, I thought it was excellent. It was a very clean show. I mean, again, there was no Saturday Night Live skits. There were no bands. There were no strange segments. It was just, they came out. It reminded me a little bit about some of the early App Store keynotes where it was just bam, 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 feature, 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 feature. And they did a really good job, really good presenter job. Some of the new presenters, like, I'm going to mispronounce his first name or last name, St. John. Yeah.
Bose was awesome.
Fantastic. The features were clean. The features were coherent. And there were a couple themes that I thought were super interesting. One was Apple is doubling down on privacy, but the other one is accessibility in so many different ways. Like Siri makes the Mac more accessible, but APIs into apps like Message and Siri make those accessible to developers, and Swift Playgrounds makes programming more accessible. And they had like wheelchair actions for Watch. So just overall, the Apple's returning to that purpose of making technology more addressable to the mainstream. And I think that's always when sort of they are best, is when they're guided by that philosophy.
Yeah. Andy, your thoughts overall, and then we'll get into the details.
I think basically there were very little big news, but very big little news over and over and over again.
That sounds like a headline for a Chicago Sun-Times piece.
That sounds like a tweet that you make to keep people quiet while you work in your Chicago Sun-Times piece. But that's really how I felt about it. I thought that just the I liked the keynote because there were you like to see a consistent message that kind of makes you think that here is part of the larger plan that that Apple is building. And I think that consistently from start to finish, they're saying that we are aware that the world is now too big and we have too many users for Apple to deliver the awesome for everybody. So now we are more open to the idea of making all of our technologies open so that all of you developers can bring part or most of the awesome for us. And that's not a dig of any kind. That's a welcome set of openness, as opposed to having, hi, everybody who's working on a messaging app, screw you, man. We have our own messages. Bye-bye. Now they're saying we've got messages and we're building our own enhancements to it, but we're going to let you, if you have like a car hailing app, we're going to let you make your app integrate with our messaging app really, really well. And that way, both the consumers and the users and the developers all get the optimum experience. Particularly, as Rene said, I think Apple thinks it's serving its users best by, instead of creating an environment with 18 different messaging apps with varying levels of security with companies that don't know where their money is coming from, they're going to basically turn messages into a secure communications platform where now this open up to third-party apps, so to speak, just like the iPad and just like the Watch and just like Apple TV and just like the iPhone was eventually opened up to third-party apps. But now everything can happen within a very, very polite, structured playground. Yeah. And that's start to finish. The accessibility stuff, again, wonderful, wonderful stuff. I mean, just I've been talking for the past couple of years to people who work on accessibility for technology, and the idea of making basically adding to a fitness app tracking for people who use wheelchairs is such a non-trivial thing, because they only gave you a part of it during the keynote, saying, well, not everybody has the same stroke on the rims of the wheels. We have to account for 3 different major kinds of stroke. And then when you go into other things like partial amputees, where not even every above the knee amp is completely the same. So the fact that they're taking on this job underscores the fact that health is one of the most beautiful and one of the best products that Apple creates. The last thing I would say is that I'm sorry that I didn't see any real aha sort of move forward. It's clumsy to say that most of these announcements, where you see this thing that Snapchat does, well, now we do it too. You see this thing that that you can do in Android Wear, well, we're doing it too now. It's not like that at all. But what WWDC is a time to take the wraps off of something that will really dazzle us. And so it was a very, very good keynote. The fact that they're making the lock screen almost now the central experience of the iPhone, that's a really big shift. The fact that they came out with they quietly debuted a brand new design language, which to me might be the most exciting news of the entire event, is big news. But I wish that there was like a Google Home sort of advancement where they're saying, here's something brand new that we're working on right now that isn't necessarily ready yet, but here's where we're looking for the next couple of years.
Rich Siegel, of course, is the developer among us from Bare Bones Software, and I'm sure it is a developer conference, and you probably look on the keynote with different eyes than the rest of us do. Is anything you noted or I've seen in subsequent materials?
Well, it is a developer conference, and I do suffer somewhat from not being there. But
Yeah, why aren't you there?
Bad timing.
Well, it's good timing for us. Let me just say that.
And for me for being here, yeah.
Yeah, we're thrilled.
The past few years, and I'm not going to use that infamous four-word phrase. The past few years, the WWDC DC keynotes have really changed into much more of a user-focused event. Honestly, the public keynote is a press event.
Right.
And the idea is that, and I don't know why my camera's shaking so much. Sorry, there's no
You look
wind.
fine. No, it looks good.
There's no earthquake either.
You are in Boston, so that's good news.
They're making announcements that are there to catch the attention of the press and the public.
Consumer media, yeah.
And so, yeah, exactly. So there won't be much deep dive technical, here's this hot new stuff that we're working on behind the scenes. And they're not going to talk about things like, okay, well, we've made huge performance advancements in this subsystem and we're making a bunch of bug fixes in this subsystem. It's going to be the shiny stuff that they can show off. And some of it's things that people have asked for, like Siri on the desktop. And there's stuff that looks like it's fun, like the stickers and visual effects in messages. And I'm sort of disappointed that I wasn't able to catch the State of the Union streams yesterday, because I think that's where the real meat of it is. Of course, that's also the parts that you can't talk about.
Is that still the case?
You can talk about it this year. You can't show photographs of their slides.
They seem to have loosened up a lot. They used to be they'd do the keynote, kick the press out, and then everything else was NDA'd.
Yeah, that's how it used to be done.
Yeah. They've now loosened up. Not only that, on the betas as well. They used to be if you knew it, you couldn't say it.
Much easier on the press. Too.
Yeah. It shows some confidence too, and maybe a little less fetishistic secrecy.
The public beta coming this summer is going to be an interesting inflection point. I years ago adopted the rule of never install the WWDC build of anything on live hardware.
Probably wise.
And I'd even caution against using the public betas of anything unless you have just really a driving, overriding need to make sure that you're compatible or make sure that it's deployable in your organization. Installing a beta just to kick the tires,
it's FOMO. People have a strong FOMO drive.
That's good advice, because I think our audience especially is very likely to at least. And I did it once. A couple of.
I did it last night and it's painful. So please don't.
A couple of OS 10s ago, I did it and I really regretted it, and actually rebuilt the whole system to go back to the normal distribution. I think you really make an excellent point, Rich, because they spent so much time on messaging, which is not something. I mean, I guess developers can participate, but it's really more aimed at consumers. Look how cool the next iOS is going to be. And at the same time, mentioned not at all a significant change to all of their operating systems, a new file system. And I want to talk about the new Apple file system in just a second. And a lot of more of the nitty-gritty. We've got a great panel to do it. Rich Siegel from Barebones Software is here. Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times, from iMore. We've got Rene Ritchie. And, it's funny because at one point about 8 o'clock last night, we had nobody because Rene said, I can't do it. And Andy, we had you and me, Andy, and which is not bad. I think an Andy and Leo show is not awful. Awesome. But I said I would like to get a developer at least on. And then we invited a number of people, all of whom said yes. And we had about 20 people on the panel. So we went from nothing to riches, but we've got, I think, a great panel here for our discussion. We'll have more in just a bit. Our show today brought to you by our friends at Trunk Club. Every day, yesterday I wore my Trunk Club jacket, a jacket that was just so nice that I probably would have not bought myself because, like many guys, I don't like to shop. Last thing I want to do is go to a store. Trunk Club really solves that. Summertime's here. Got to put the winter clothes away, spruce up your wardrobe with some, maybe a short sleeve button downs or a lightweight blazer. Gosh, I need one of those for sure. Shopping for new clothes in stores takes forever, is humiliating. I think that's the main reason I don't like it. It's humiliating. And that goes back to when I was a kid and they said, Yeah, you go to the Husky section over there. And it's like, and ever since, I haven't wanted to go into a store. But Trunk Club got me covered, because here's what happens. And by the way, men and women now, and that's wonderful. That I think my wife got them to do it, because she was so mad that I got all this great stuff in my Trunk Club. She said, why don't you do this for women? And they said, all right, well, we'll let you try it out before anybody else. And now they have it for everybody. So what happens is you contact trunkclub.com, and they hook you up with your own personal stylist. And this is free, by the way. This is free at this point. You give them your measurements. You share your likes and just your dislikes. The stylist, who's a pro, super pro, will help you. I talked to my stylist. She was very understanding when I said I'm a Husky. She said, we don't call it Husky. It's okay. And she found some really great stuff. Then she puts it up on the website. You go through it. You say, let me try this, try this, try this. 80 top brands, too. We're not just talking like the Trunk Club brand. Trunk Club's from Nordstrom. They have everything. They have everything. So then once you pick it, they put it in a trunk, and your trunk comes to your door. Premium clothes, expert advice, no work, your own personal stylist. You try the clothes on. You see how it looks. You do a fashion show for your loved ones, whatever rocks your boat. You post it on Instagram, and then you pick what you want and send the rest back. And then and only then do you pay for the stuff you keep. That's it. Everything else goes back. No cost to you. And it's not a subscription, so you're not going to get another trunk in a month. You get it only when you want it. You can even, they now have stores. So if you live in Dallas, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or DC, go by the Trunk Club Clubhouse, and you can meet your stylist. Mine's in LA. Actually, we should, when we go down there next week, we should stop by. She's so great. You have 10, I kind of have a crush on her now, because she really gets me. She gets me, man. You have 10 days to try on the clothes. Keep what you like. Send back what you don't. Shipping is always free. It's such a great deal. I love this. So the next time you want to look sharp, date night's coming up, you're going to go to an event. Maybe you've got an important, like a wedding month. Make a big statement at the next big event on your calendar with a look that's handpicked for you and your style by somebody who does this for a living. Trunkclub.com/MacBreak. You don't want to look like your mommy dressed you. Worse, you don't want to look like you dressed you. Trunkclub.com/MacBreak. And we thank them so much for their support. This is a great solution for the geeks among us. We just want to look sharp for those special occasions, but just don't know where to start. And no shopping involved. I really want to talk about APFS. This is the new file system. Now, I know it's very early days. In fact, none of you were able to go to the session, which is, I think, right now, or like this morning. It was at 10 this morning. So you're all working basically off of a very kind of
developer document.
Incomplete developer document.
The head of CoreOS went over it for a little bit during the State of the Union yesterday.
Oh, good. All right. They did not one word about this at the keynote, which tells you really the keynote is not for developers. Tell us about APFS. This HFS and HFS Plus have been with Apple since OS 10 or even before.
They said 18 years or something.
Holy camole. And there are better file systems out there. Remember the rumor that Apple a couple of generations ago was going to start shipping ZFS, which was created at Sun and is now owned by Oracle, is widely used. BSD, and this is why it would have been easy for Apple to do it. It is very commonly used with free, open, and NetBSD, the BSD distributions. It is now available on Linux, although that's been a struggle, mostly because of licensing, not for technical reasons.
Yes.
But you can now add it to some Linux distributions. And it looks like some of the features that Apple was hoping to get with ZFS are available in APFS. I'll let you start, Rene, because you're champing at the bit here.
Well, no, so the presentation was very concise because, again, it's meant to give developers a highlight, an overview, and it doesn't delve as deeply as the documents do. But the high-level bits for this were that it's super fast, it's super efficient, it's for files and directories. You only pay for storage when it's modified. So if you make copies of documents, you're not storing multiple copies of them. It only starts to eat into your storage when you start making versions of those files. It does snapshots full volume. They're mountable. It support reverting. It scales from Apple Watch to Mac Pro, so it's going to be the file system that runs on every one of Apple's devices. It's designed for a world of modern flash, for SSD.
It supports trim automatically for both Apple and non-Apple SSDs.
And important for Apple, the encryption is actually unified now between iOS and OS X. So it's built-in system-level encryption. Which
and from a consumer point of view, that's maybe the most interesting takeaway, which is Apple's going all in on encryption. This is better than File Vault.
Much better. It's great because it'll encourage more consumers to encrypt files. Oh, goodness. Sorry. I've been trying to tweak my camera settings, and I've been failing desperately.
Your beard's turning red, which I don't think it is. So,
well, before it was gray, it was reddish. But I will.
Oh, wait a minute. That's the web setting that says turn back the clock. We don't want to use that one.
Oh no, it's like if you look at I've been doing archiving of old pictures of me. You see like there's a little bit of red left here.
Yeah.
So when I go through like Google Photos and it goes back,
use the eyedropper.
It's like the progress bar of my old age. You see like the white is like the progress bar of my old age loading in. It's like, oh dear.
Oh dear.
But getting back to ZFS, excuse me.
This is a problem, by the way, Rich does not have at this point. I think he's
I have no idea what you people are talking about.
He's kind of anti-Andy. Whereas Andy seems to be sprouting hair from a variety of appendages, Rich seems to have lost all of his.
I'm very pro Andy. I think I'm more the un-Andy.
The un-Andy. The bizarro Andy.
You get older, the hair will leave your face and your head and start growing out of your ears and your nose.
We switch off quarter by quarter. This quarter, Rich is the bizarro Andy. Next quarter, I start being bizarro Rich. But what I was gonna say is that encryption. Most people don't use encryption because it's a pain in the butt. You have to either encrypt the entire volume, which costs you a little bit of performance, and also puts, if you lose that password, you lose that entire volume is unrecoverable. Also, it makes the volume really, really hard to repair if something goes kerflooey. An existing like a desktop recovery tool might not be able to handle it. Even services might not be able to handle it, and it's just a pain in the butt. With the new file system, it supports encryption on pretty much every level, so that you can actually just simply say, here is one folder that I want to be secure because this is what has my financial information on it. Or if you're planning a surprise birthday party for your longtime companion, then you can just have, here is the one document that I want to be encrypted and everything else is the wild, wild west. So the idea of having point and shoot encryption doesn't just make it easier, but it makes it something that people are more willing to do if it's really no more difficult than clicking a checkbox when they save a new file.
I have to think Apple's going to start shipping, as they do with the iPhone, with decryption on by default. Because the new file system is so fast, things like write coalescing, which really speed up with small files, they could probably afford to put encryption on by default.
I believe it will be. I don't know that for sure, but I believe it is going to be just encrypted.
Yeah. Rich, you were pointing out, though, that this is not macOS Sierra. This is a later time frame.
That appears to be the case, that APFS will roll out in 2017. It seems to me in reading what I've been able to find about the new file system, they really have two fundamental design goals here. Well, maybe three. First is they are recognizing that storage container sizes, like the size of a hard drive, has grown beyond all of the bounds even conceived by old file system designs. And so they need to take that into account, both in terms of the quantity of storage available, but also in the quantity of discrete items that you're going to be putting on these drives. So that's sort of the big data, giant hard drive model. On the other hand, the computers that they're shipping all have SSDs in them, which are still comparatively small by the standards of what you can buy a spinning hard drive to hold or build an array to hold. And it seems to me that they're serving this dual goal of efficiently using giant drives, but also efficiently using very small drives. So they'll be able to ship Macs that have 128 or 256 gig drives in them, SSDs in them, and keep their costs down, because that's important. They still make a lot of margin on hardware. And really not just Macs, but handheld devices too, iPads and so forth. and they can make more efficient use of this space than they could previously with HFS or any of the current alternatives. I want to back up a little bit to ZFS. ZFS was interesting, but I think ultimately it wasn't going to work. It did a lot of things that everybody wanted at a technical level, but Apple, the guys who were working on ZFS within Apple actually left and tried to build a company to sell it.
Oops.
And were unable to.
Yeah.
And I mean sell it as a
add-on or something.
A purchasable product.
Right.
Like you'd buy a ZFS license and it would have a nice user interface for setting up ZFS containers and so forth. And they just couldn't make a go of it. Encryption, yeah, another interesting design goal. I think at an end user level, though, most people don't care about how the nuts and bolts work.
Right.
They want to, they might not even know if encryption is available to them. I could see Apple shipping encrypted APFS as the default on new hardware, so that if your device gets stolen or lost, you don't have to worry about your data.
I totally see that. I think that I agree with you that people, but maybe don't want to deal with the nitty gritty, but they're very aware of encryption thanks to the San Bernardino case. And I think that if you asked people, would you prefer to have your data encrypted, almost universally they'd say yes. So encryption on by default is a very smart move.
Right, and the hardware supports it, right?
Yep.
I file vaulted my 2013 MacBook Pro, and I file vaulted my Mac Pro, and honestly, there's no discernible difference between file vault and no file vault.
Yeah. Yeah, and this should be even better. There is some question about how the scheme would work. Somebody in the chat room saying, would the keys be in the keychain? I don't think so, because it sounds like it's full disk encryption. That, at least in my experience with full disk encryption, for instance, in Linux, you can't even use the hard drive until you've unlocked it. You can't even see the keychain until you've unlocked it. So I would imagine there'd be some other scheme for this. They also, somebody was asking about journaling. Of course, HFS Plus supports journaling as an option, and usually it's on. Yes, journaling, better journaling. They have a copy on write metadata scheme. Apple's calling it crash protection. This is from Ars Technica's analysis of it, which aims to ensure that file system commits and writes to the file system journal stay in sync, even if something happens during the write, including if the system loses power, which means a much more robust system. And then the thing that people, I know the high-level feature that everybody loved about ZFS was snapshots. And it looks like they will support that as well.
Yeah, that's another big deal when you make it something that a developer can simply do without having to build their own system for snapshotting a document, for instance. When it becomes just simply a system resource where they can just simply call an API to get to offer the user a previous edition of a document or another different state of a piece of data, that's a pretty big deal.
Time Machine gives you kind of a pseudo snapshot, but it's done in an ugly and
it's a glorious hack.
Yeah, it's a glorious hack. This would really give you versioning in a beautiful way, and also a way to recover. You know, people who use ZFS frequently will say, you know, I don't care if I update my system and it breaks everything. I'll just roll it back. I've got a snapshot. It's automatic, right?
Yep. And it's not just documents, but also
I sort of hasten to add here that that's not this stuff is all really good. Snapshots are great, and crash defense is great, but none of this removes the need for a reliable backup scheme. If you use SuperDuper today, and you should, or some other backup program, you should keep using it, and you should plan on using it once APFS becomes the default, because you're still going to want backups.
Apparently, there's also, in addition to snapshotting, cloning. What's the difference, Rene?
So what cloning is that file level thing that I spoke about, because they said that oftentimes what they find on people's systems is that copies end up happening of documents. For one reason or another, you have multiple copies of a document, and all of those take up the same amount of space as the original document. So with cloning, you get a copy of that document, but as long as there's no changes to it, it basically references the original and doesn't take up any extra space. And then as you start making changes, those are stored as a differential. So you always get the most efficient storage possible.
And according to ours, you're also going to get something called space sharing. Multiple volumes can be created out of the same chunk of physical space, which sounds weird. Apparently, enterprises use this, something called thin provisioning, which would, for instance, let you create 4 terabyte volumes on a single terabyte disk.
Yeah.
It's like
this is
very
buying,
next generation, is what it is, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's like buying in the stock market, buying an option or a future on storage that you promise to buy later if it actually needs physically more than the amount of data that's available.
Useful for containerizing and things like that.
Right. So if you, for instance, if you're trying to in enterprise, if you need to image a standard, let's say 500 gigabyte or 1 terabyte system image for people, but you need to have like 8 different versions of this, you can possibly have each one of those images on the same volume, because you know that not every one of them is going to be taking up the full 1 terabyte that you're going to be flashing onto the volume. But there, as with so much of the stuff that's in this document, and from the people I've been talking to, a lot of it is, the key is going to be in the implementation. It's not a consumer-facing feature. It is a feature that administrators and developers can then use to deploy features that will be visible to consumers. So a lot of the stuff that you might hear, I'll only speak for myself, that you might hear me saying about it, is speculative, based on here's one implication of this feature, and here's one application of this feature.
Yeah, I mean, even most developers won't be dealing at that level. But the upshot of it is, one hopes, is a more reliable, faster computer.
And also one that's just easier. Like last year was on-demand resources, and the idea was that if you're using an Apple TV and your kid goes to download a game, they should never have to see, oh, you're out of space, please go delete some things and then try and download your game again. It should just download that game, and the system should just handle it. And with the Apple file system, I think that same feeling is there, is that you shouldn't have to worry about encryption or space management or storage management or backupping. Same way a Time Machine was supposed to be almost set it and forget it. This should provide all the basic functionality with you without you having to be a systems administrator.
Yeah, I think one of the central things of I think everyone who writes about or is an analyst about Apple is writing a brand new version of the Apple Playbook. And one of the big chapters in my version of it is that almost everything they ever do is focused on either selling hardware or creating a better experience for the consumer. So if you look at this new file system, if Microsoft were doing it or another company were doing it, you would think about they want to make their computers easier to administer and easier to deploy services. Apple is very, very happy to make its consultants and make its admins happy, but in the end, I think that their focus is on how can we make a better computing experience for our actual users. And in this case, it's how do we let them make their data more secure, for instance, for being able to always have a safe copy of their data, make sure their data is always secure. As Rene said, it's not about admins creating disk images. It's about how do we make sure that users will never see I'm sorry, you're out of space until you're actually out of space. Is there a way that we can actually manage this problem well so that users will never see a disappointment-gram on their screen? Yeah,
I think this is Apple at its best, where it does really deep, smart stuff that it knows will benefit consumers and doesn't need to really talk about it. I bet you in the rollout of Sierra, they won't mention it. When it rolls out in January, they won't mention it.
Well, they did mention the front-facing stuff about the storage efficiency in sorry, I'm going to say OS 10 now, macOS, where they showed how you could reclaim massive amounts of space by doing some intelligent storage management. And that's part and parcel with this is once the file system is efficient and you give people, they're not doing a lot of this automatically, but you give people the tools that automatically flush their web cache and their mail.
So when they talked about saving space in macOS Sierra, that was in part powered by this new APFS.
No, the AFS is the back end. The front end thing is doing things like just cleaning up garbage that you don't need anymore.
Right.
Or moving things to the cloud. Apple has this whole nearline strategy where they try to keep things that are recent and frequently accessed on the local drive for high performance access, but things that are infrequently used or old up on the cloud so that it doesn't take up what they consider precious local storage. And that's sort of the front-facing part of this. And you put those together and you have a much more efficient automatic file system, and you give people tools that do things like clear the web cache, get rid of the mail, the mail cache that's built up, move files off that they don't need anymore, like empty the trash if you haven't done that in years, and then you get the space savings and the space reclamation. And suddenly, even though you have those smaller SSD drives, you still get the maximum performance and the maximum amount of storage out of them.
Yeah. Also, I've been asking around over the past day, and I haven't got any actual answers to this question, but I strongly suspect that when that tool is released and we get to see how it actually works, we're going to see that that cache data isn't just being deleted, it's going to be secure deleted, because one vector of access to your data are all these, quote, worthless cache files. But just because you have you've deleted an email off the server, it could be somewhere in an on-disk buffer, and cache files are a very, very valuable piece of property to take a look at if you want to sniff out personal data on people. So I'd be surprised if I don't think that this is the purpose of that tool by any means, but I think that once they've got that on the whiteboard, once they wrote down and we will delete files, they will say, well, of course we're going to secure delete them. Why would we not? Because I think that's really part of the new philosophy of Apple.
Rich, do you think as a developer of user-land application software, this is going to be something that you can take advantage of or give you new features or not?
Well, I think one of the sort of nice things about this is that it's going to be largely invisible at the application level.
Yeah.
In really much the same way that whole disk encryption is today. Applications have no idea what's going on below the file system layer. The APIs work the way they do. APFS preserves the API semantics, so you don't really have to worry about those details unless you really are playing around at the kernel level, and application developers don't.
Somebody like SurePocket software that does super duper might be paying closer attention to this kind of stuff.
I think these lower level changes are strongly relevant to their interests.
Yeah.
And the same with Alsoft, the folks who make Disk Warrior.
Sure.
There's still going to be a need for file system recovery no matter what the file system is.
Right.
And there's still going to be a need for backups no matter what the medium is.
And to echo your warning, do not install this today.
Oh, for the love of God, no.
There's all sorts of issues. Ours points out the fact that it's a case-sensitive file system, which could break some things in OS 10 as it stands today. You probably wouldn't even want to do it when macOS Sierra comes out. Just wait.
There's for instance, particularly in research and academia, I was working with a friend who is, I won't get into which the project they're working on, but part of the administrative help that I was giving this person was that they needed to put this data on a different drive, but the way that this software works, and again, it's for researchers, it's not for the general public, so it's okay if it kind of stinks on some levels. All of the file paths are hard-coded. So if he or she were to move it onto a different drive and anything about that path were to change, it would not be possible to access a year's worth of data. We were talking a couple of weeks ago about anticipating betas and how impressed I am that Rene will actually put beta software on his actual working iPhone, whereas I always have a second iMac, I always have a second iPhone that has all the betas on. When it comes to a change in the file system, I will have a third Mac, right? Because I'm not only would I be expecting this to break things, I would expect my data to not be there in a week from now. Yeah. Because anything this brand, it's like saying imagine that we had the ability to tweak the balance between the gases that are in our atmosphere. It's like there is no going if you screw it up, there is no going back. You just have to start all over again with a new planet.
Yeah.
Should also point out that this is very ambitious, and I've seen companies, Microsoft comes to mind. Microsoft had in mind with Longhorn a complete recreation of the file system, which they abandoned like a year in.
Centric, wasn't it?
Yeah. And they just decided, this was a bad idea. And I don't know how many millions or hundreds of millions of dollars they'd put into it, but they'd certainly promoted it and put a lot of time into it and abandoned it. So it is a non-trivial thing to do. You're changing some fundamental plumbing. And so it is completely possible this may never even emerge.
But it is important. I don't think we can overstress how important it is to have a modern
It's a modernization, yeah.
Because realize that the Mac file system, the Windows file system, all these other file systems, a lot of have their origins from like 1980 something. If I'm not mistaken, some of these operating systems actually still have working code that is 20 years old in them, and none of these things foresaw the idea of having something like this, a volume that's this big. That can be mounted and unmounted in a second, that has 64 gigabytes worth of storage in it. And also, they didn't anticipate technology that's not like a spinning magnetic disk with the latency and the safety problems that you have with a spinning disk. What happens when you try to put that same file system on electrons, on silicon? It's not the same thing. The way that these things are designed to hold files, the things that are safe for a spinning disk are not safe for moving electrons around. So it is the sort of thing where you do have to nuke the planet and start all over again. That's the only way to have a truly modern system. So there are going to be a lot of bumps for the first year or so, but that's how you get to an operating system that's still viable in 2020.
It's kind of like having a house on wooden pier and posts foundation and taking out the foundation, putting in a concrete foundation.
And they're doing it step by step, like it's modular. Like we got Swift one year, then they gave us a year to sort of let that settle in, and they redid LaunchD, and they tried to redo Discovery, but they're doing these modular changes to components instead of buying Next and getting a whole new operating system. It's sort of piece by piece they're replacing the substructures of all these items.
Speaking of Swift, I'm super gratified by the progress Swift has made. Swift 3.0. The Swift has been open sourced, and now the Swift Playgrounds is a way to get kids particularly using iPads, into the Swift arena in a way that is, I think, a little less patronizing than a lot of the here's how you code software I've seen in the past. Rich, I presume you're still writing in Objective-C, or you're not writing in Pascal, are you?
No. Not anymore.
Was the first BB edit in Pascal?
Yes. The very, very first version was in Object Pascal, and that was a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
The developments in Swift, I've sort of been watching them and peeking in just occasionally. I haven't done any work with Swift. I've never written a single line of Swift code, but that's about need and opportunity. I think Swift looks like a great language. It solves a lot of problems that the C family languages have sort of accepted as the price of doing business.
Yeah.
And so I think going forward for writing something new, Swift would be a really good choice. For my specific use case, and granted, I'm an outlier. I have code that dates back, in some cases, 30 years. And you can't really just sit down and rewrite everything in Swift. You wouldn't want to.
Right.
So I have a lot of C, I have a lot of Objective-C, I have a lot of C++, and it all plays nicely together. I have a working system. Going forward, if, once Swift stops changing quite so rapidly,
the change to 3 is such a significant change that probably you'll have to would have to refactor everything, I would guess.
There would be some refactoring and retesting and some overhauling, and so Swift, as great as it is, I think today still represents very much a moving target. And if you're ready to deal with that, I say go for it. If you're sort of up to your eyeballs and the work involved in following that target is more than you can factor into your scheduling, then stick with what you have. Objective-C is great. It's not going anywhere. The compilers keep getting better. The APIs keep getting better, and it's a very sound solution.
So if you were starting a project from scratch, you'd consider Swift?
Yeah, if I had no baggage, if I were starting a project from scratch, or I were new to the platform, I think Swift is a great place to start.
Would you recommend it for somebody starting out? We have a couple of one high school, one college kid who are Apple scholars in the audience today. There are a lot of kids there, including a 9-year-old at the WWDC, which is awesome, who have apps in the App Store. Would you
absolutely.
start in Swift? Would that be a good place to begin?
Yeah, Swift is a good way to start. The playgrounds are very interesting.
So
The new Playground app is very interesting for people who are getting used to the idea of just programming anything. The notions of control flow and logic and so forth. The great thing about Swift as a language is that, like many other newer modern language, it abstracts away or isolates you from a certain set of mistakes that you tend to make when you're learning how to program.
It's type safe, is it not?
To me, the biggest feature of Swift is that it doesn't have pointers as a data type.
That's not fully type safe, but it's something that makes people make a lot of mistakes.
Well, you're right. It's more about it's more about runtime safety. You don't have to worry about whether something exists or whether something used to exist and now doesn't. You express your code, you express your idea, and if it doesn't work, it's because your idea or your expression had an error and not because you misplaced a piece of punctuation.
Right. You kind of want the compiler to find buffer overflows and reused of trashed pointers, never used variables, all those things at compile time. What you don't want it to have happen is that happen at runtime, and what you really don't want it to have happen is never, which allows, most of the exploits, including the very first exploit, the Morris worm, are related to buffer overflows, writing to an area of memory and then jumping to that area of memory even though it's not yours. And so I believe, and that's type safe languages eliminate that. I believe Swift is type safe to that extent, yeah?
Right. Exploitable buffer overflows tend to go away. Yeah. Entire classes of bugs relating to the use of pointers go away.
Is it garbage collected or yes? No?
It is not.
It's reference, dereference?
It's reference counted. Garbage collection was an idea on the Mac whose time came and went.
Yeah. Java is garbage collected.
Java is garbage collected, as an old friend of mine once said. An old friend and one-time Java programmer, he said Java is garbage collected, and Java programmers too often take this as a license to generate unlimited amounts of garbage.
Right. Not a good thing.
The other thing is that because Swift is structured in a particular way, the compiler, and it is a compiled language, it's based on the LLVM architecture, the same that the current Xcode compiler stack is based on. The compiler can make a great many optimizations that were either unsafe or impossible before with C-type languages. So the notion of pointer aliasing, where you might have conceivably two pointers looking at the same area of memory, that goes away. There's a value model for data so that things come back as values and not pointers to values. And to make a very long story short, it's kind of the compiler writer's dream, because you can just do these crazy things to the generated code, and you end up with runtime behavior which is just ridiculously fast. And you end up with applications that are smaller and faster and at no risk for certain classes of bugs and at low risk for other certain classes of bugs. And that really kind of makes it a win for writing shippable products.
When Apple open sourced it, so I thought, well, first of all, that's great. But I wondered how many people on other platforms would look to Swift as a language for them. And there are a lot of competitors out there, including Google's Go. Do you think Swift is a language that is going to see widespread adoption beyond Apple?
Well, it's a good question. There are two parts to the equation here. There's the language, and then there are the APIs that it talks to.
Right.
Objective-C is an open source language. Clang, the compiler stack for C languages that came out of LLVM and with heavy contributions from Apple, that's open source too. What really makes Mac products and iOS products and watch products are the APIs that they have on the installed OS that make all of these things possible.
And in
think
fact,
there
becoming a
I
Mac
think there are-
programmer is a process of learning the APIs as much as
Pardon?
anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. I had the big, I still do, the 6-foot shelf.
Right, the wall of paper that teaches you how to use the platform APIs.
Yeah.
And those things will only be on Apple's platforms. And
Right.
so that drives adoption, that drives developer lock-in.
Right.
So yeah, Swift as an open source language, I can totally see that. I can see deployments on other platforms, probably Linux. Although I think there's a port of LLVM or Clang for Windows. I'd have to look. I don't know. And so I could see the Swift compiler turning up on different platforms. What I don't see is the Swift playground experience,
Right.
the REPL loop.
Right.
Sure, you could do that in a terminal, but the APIs not
Right.
being available anywhere but Apple's platforms.
And I think even not just the API, but the library of library routines, that becomes something programmers really look for. And unless a language is widely adopted, you just don't see the libraries. And right now, if you're using Java or Python, you've got programming is almost just a process of sticking things together. So much stuff has been written. CPAN on Perl.
One thing that was super interesting yesterday too is they announced a lot of stuff for Xcode. They do every year, but like for example, Interface Builder now has voiceover for accessibility.
Oh,
There's
that's
a
great.
memory bug. Oh, it's terrific, and it also can be automated now. So Sal's probably been busy there. There's a memory debugger which got huge applause from the crowd, and it even automatically finds leaks, which everyone seemed to love. A new provisioning system, so they don't have to do signing actions anymore. You can just configure and issue details. No more need to revoke. So just a lot of big pain points got pulled away. And as much as the language is great, the compiler, like you said, and the developing environment are also key.
And that's another issue, and it's a tough one to know what to do. On the one hand, if a company like Apple provides you free this incredible IDE and environment, there's a lot to be said for that, promoting development on that platform. But it also completely kills the third-party ecosystem. So you don't see the kind of innovation that you see maybe on Java, where there's a lot of different ways to do it and people competing
Eclipse,
with
the
each
height
other.
of innovation.
Well, Eclipse was eclipsed, if you will,
Yeah,
by
absolutely.
IntelliJ and Android Studio. And so I think that it's a tough one because it's great. I think it's great, and I've always celebrated the fact that Apple, from day one, gave you a development environment. So
Microsoft is here. Microsoft is huge. I mean, they sponsored our party, but they also had their own huge party,
Right.
and they're trying to get people to use Developer Studio to do a lot of work in.
yeah, sure.
So there will be
Microsoft
large-
has really started to look across the aisle at Apple and other companies and say, well, we could really develop for them. They got
They're not
Linux
buying-
on Azure for crying
They're
out
not
loud.
buying LinkedIn. They're busy with other stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Okay, enough of this heavy duty stuff. We were really getting under the hood there, but that's if we don't do it. I mean, this is important, I think, to our audience. And I didn't want to spend an hour talking about all the new features and messages. I did kind of hope, and I know it was a fool's hope, that there would be some cross-platform support on messages, because as it stands right now, Apple's solution, as good as it is Apple only. And if you're using Android, you get a very poor experience. And most of the time, and I look at my son's cohort, he's 21, he's in a frat, they all have iPhones and if you're on an Android, I said, is anybody using it? He says, there's one kid. And this poor kid is left out. He's a green bubble.
Yeah.
He doesn't get
so
to
bad.
He doesn't get to play with the other kids. And I was really, and Google, by the way, goes the other way. Hangouts, I'm sure Allo, all the stuff that they do, and WhatsApp is cross-platform, Facebook is cross-platform.
Not
But
for
Apple,
Windows Phone, but for iOS at least.
well, Windows Phone, come on. If you're using Windows Phone in a frat, you're more than left out. I think you probably get beat up a lot.
Well, no, but the point I'm trying to make is that Google's really good about supporting things that enhance, like any company, they're really good
Well, they
about
have to,
supporting
just
things
as
that
Apple-
enhance their yes.
Just as Apple did in the early days, they had to make sure they worked with
Yeah.
everybody
So
else.
it's not out of the benefit, like they're not trying to be like this great gifting company that says we've got to really support everybody. It's like it's a smart decision for them. They want those eyeballs.
Green bubbles
on the-
matter.
You could say the other way around, that it's smart for Apple to say, nope, we're not going to let this be multi-platform. If your friends want to do it, you're going to have to talk to your
Well,
friends.
it's good business.
Like
Yeah.
BBM,
But
it's
the
good business
problem-
until it's not. Because if you're BlackBerry, keeping BBM to yourself is fantastic until you take it too long, and then WhatsApp eats your lunch.
Did you?
Yeah, that's exactly the problem I think that Apple is facing, because if you ride buses, if you ride subways, if you walk along the streets, you see that again, Apple, the iPhone is really just one platform among many, and so that. I think that a lot of people in the lower schools are not saying, oh, well, I'm going to make sure that I get this phone that works with iMessage. It's going to be, I'm going to move on to WhatsApp. I'm going to move on to Snapchat. I'm going to move to a really cool application that does really wonderful things. And because these new messaging apps have to be multi-platform, it becomes irrelevant what hardware you have. I think that's what the thing that really was most of my notes as I was writing about the new version of Messages was that they learned a lesson when they saw how popular the feature where you automatically give yourself big eyes and you're vomiting rainbows. Apple, I think that taught Apple something about maybe if we're trying to convince people we're the more secure messaging platform, that might not be the feature that's reaching people. So it's Apple. I think that this is one of those things that 5 years from now might be a bad choice for Apple. I'm starting to become more aware of how detached people are getting from the actual hardware and how attached they're getting to third-party services. So I wish for Messages to become a third-party service.
Pursuing lock-in is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and there's two really good. Well, one, Apple had their own custom Snapchat filter at WWDC, so I mean they're getting used to they may not put their stuff anywhere, but like they started putting things in Tumblr, they started putting things into I forget the name of that app where you swipe different. They're putting their stuff where their users are now, and they put a WWDC filter in Snapchat. But also, I mean, like companies in general, they want to protect what makes them money, and they want to fragment what makes their competitors money. And for now, iMessage is an incredible value add for iPhone. It might not always be that way, and at that point, they're going to have to make a hard decision about whether they want to transition to being a platform or a services play, and not a value add to iPhone. But at the same time, the value that they do provide is real, and as long as it's your core technology, as long as you own an iPhone. It's the same as if you own a box. If you are input zero, you are always only one announcement away from reclaiming a massive amount of your users. If your service sucks and people go and they install a third-party app or they install a competitive service, and then you have like a WWDC and you make something so phenomenal, they're going to come back because it'll be the default option in the next version they install. So Apple's working from the high ground for now, but it is that point in time when that BlackBerry Messenger moment. At what point in time could you have to let go because you no longer have sufficient control over that ecosystem?
It also increases the degree of difficulty for Apple, and that means that Messages has to work. Mm-hmm. There is no excuse for it not working, especially because they have made it inextricable from MMS messaging. This morning, for instance, I overslept. I did not make it to breakfast as planned with a friend of mine. And so I'm reaching over to my nightstand that has an iPad on it. I could have sent a message using Messages. And I thought, no, I don't think that's the most reliable tool. If I use any other tool but Messages, I am sure that they will get it. If I send it using Messages, there's a possibility that Messages will say, oh, as had happened one time last year, oh, let's see, the last place where this user used Messages was in his office. So instead of routing it to his iPhone, I'm going to send this to his desktop. And so as a result,
I've seen that exact phenomenon myself in different situations, and it has sort of driven me to use Google Hangouts because most of the people I know have Google accounts, and the ones that don't use anything, and I have to use SMS with them.
Yeah.
But I have seen similar reliability. I have similar beefs with Messages. I find it just supremely annoying how when something comes in over iMessage, I hear about it on all 4 devices that are within arm's reach. It's like
it's interesting because
they notify me on the device that I'm currently using.
Their model, in some ways, iOS is very security first, and in some ways, it's sort of letting the engineers run the place, which is very different from what Apple's usual philosophy is. But for example, there's no sync. It's not like an IMAP thing where just all your devices have access to this pool of your iMessages on a server. Each iMessage gets generated and sent, and then it's almost like a unique iMessage for every device. And it tries to deliver those for several days. I think it's 8 to 10. And if it can't, those messages are obliterated. They're not stored anywhere. So you can't just go and a year later suddenly reclaim all your iMessage. But because of that, you get issues like some devices get it first because it's a unique message and it just happens to get there first. Or conversations splinter apart because Andy iMessaged me from his iPad, but now he's on his Android phone. And because it does end-to-end encryption, it can't tell till the last second that it's no longer sure that it's Andy. So it won't put that in an encrypted group chat and has to like make out a new thing to put it in. So we pay the price sort of for some of the security stuff they built into it.
You knew, Rene, that there was no way they were going to do an Android version.
Yes.
You were trying to talk us out of it.
Yes.
But the rumor mill said there might. Do you think that there might be one, and Apple itself is going through this debate?
Apple is a company that, anytime a blogger or a journalist or an analyst or anybody speculates about this stuff, Apple has billions and billions of dollars and is generally smart enough to have prototyped it and or explored the idea of it.
Yeah. We're not the only ones who could think of it, I guess.
No, and again, like if you and Andy and Rich and I had billions of dollars and we were thinking, hey, a toaster fridge, maybe that would be great. I have $1 billion. Bob, can you make me a toaster fridge during the commercial break?
Just in
we'll
case.
See.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt. And they made Beats, and Beats they announced again yesterday that the new music app is shipping for iPhone, iPad, Windows, and Android. So, or iTunes on Windows at least, and Android. So in that case, the service is more important to Apple than the device lock-in. So they are absolutely making that for Android, and they did a pretty good job at it. So they know how to make Android apps now. But Apple, again, they're not famous to be a services company. They're not famous for cross-platform. And also, they would have to support potentially 1 billion Android users hitting that platform.
That might be the larger reason that you just don't want to get in that.
We saw BBM just go down for weeks when it went cross-platform. And other services have had immense problems scaling. Some of them, like WhatsApp, is phenomenal now. But the way Apple architected it, just adding 1 billion users is a non-trivial endeavor.
They may see the strategic point of having an Android version, and they may have a technical issue with doing it. That's a very good point.
Remember, BBM, it was built in a time and place where they thought there would never be people with more than one device. It never occurred to them. So you had a unique pin, and they had to end up using Exchange as a layer. Their arch enemy had to be a layer on top to sort of try to figure out multiple device universes. So
WhatsApp still has that problem. It's tied to your phone number, which is, I think, a real limitation. I think the real risk to Apple is Facebook Messenger at this point. And I think more and more, Apple was playing catch-up, of course, with Facebook Messenger features and Snapchat features. But more and more, that's the one that runs the risk of being totally cross-platform and totally dominating.
You have to have also you don't even have to have a Facebook account anymore because they made it so that you could have a Facebook Messenger without even, which was the big barrier of entry to some people. Because they wanted nothing to do with Facebook.
Right.
Facebook is a huge.
Go ahead.
Facebook is just such a huge problem because it really is. It's such a fundamental resource for normal humans because it really unfortunately Facebook got me finally last year because I was in the bunker. I was surrounded by ammo. My clips were running dry and trying to defend my bunker against Facebook. And finally, it came to here is the bullet that I used to take my own life, or here is the white flag I raise to say that, okay, I want to know what's going. I want my family members particularly to have contact in my life and for me to see these little moments of my nieces and my nephews' lives that I'm missing out on because they will not print these out into postcards and send them to me using an anonymous Dropbox that I rent in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so, but it really is for everybody. So it really is the thing where if people are going to start using Facebook Messenger, they don't care that it's not terribly secure. They don't care that Facebook is looking at their data. All they want to do is be able to talk to their friends and their family members. So Apple really has. But another thing I was thinking when they're going through this demo was that part of Apple's job is not just to implement really great security features and make that as part of their way of life, but also to explain to people why this is such a valuable thing for them to do. You can't just simply say, hey, we've made this messaging app secure. You're welcome. I'm now going to stand here and let you throw flowers at me. You really have to say, here is why we think this is so important. And we're going to try to lure you into messages by making it into as fun and as current an experience as you may be getting on non-secure platforms.
Well, we're going to take a break. I do want to talk about differential privacy because this is how Apple is answering the really interesting question. How do you make a number of platforms that are private, that are secure, but still offer the kinds of features that Facebook and Google are willing to offer by collating information about you? And Apple says the solution is differential privacy, and I'm curious whether you guys think this is enough, whether it'll work. We'll talk about that. And music, too. Didn't see a new iTunes anywhere out there.
Music app, though?
And even the new music app wasn't greatly changed, but they had some changes that might make a big difference.
Again, brand new design language.
Yeah.
We saw 3 different instances of this brand new design language without a mention of, hey, we have a brand new design language.
And they may have simply fixed something that was causing a lot of pain, the issue of not confusing streamed versus downloaded music. We'll talk about that in just a second. Our show today, by the way, great to have you, Rich Siegel. Bare bones software. If you're not using BB Edit or Text Wrangler, you ought to be. I for a long time used Yojimbo. I for a long time used your mail program. What else are you doing? Is it all? Are you all in on the BB Edit? Is that it?
At the moment, yes. I mean, we don't really talk about things that we're working on and not shipping.
Oh, you sound like Apple or something.
Car. He's working on a car, Leo.
Yeah.
Use the phrase. Use the phrase. Use the phrase.
Maximizing shareholder value. No, wait. Mumble, something. Leveraging synergies.
But you really ought to be using BB Edit. And if you want to just try the free version of it, I'm really glad you went back to offering a free Text Wrangler. It's just such a great program. And I understand your conundrum because it's so good. I think a lot of people say, well, what do I need BB Edit for? You need BB Edit. You need, just for the, it's my single favorite feature of BB Edit. I wish every operating system had something like this. You got to do a Linux version, Rich. The worksheets.
I mean, yes,
the shell worksheets are so awesome.
Yeah. Can I just say that if not only is BB Edit a better product, BB Edit is that product where you will like Text Edit so much you will think, I really want Rich and the rest of the BB Edit team to have some money. So
yes.
Even if you want to just buy BB Edit and never use it, just knowing that you've bought a bunch of copies for some very talented and hardworking developers, that's worth the price of admission.
So no Linux version in the...
when you do that, I get to have meat that week.
Yeah.
Poor Rich.
Also, if Rich feeds the birds, again, these teacup dinosaurs, there's less chance that they will go hungry and start to go after him and his family.
Yes.
They are amazing predators.
I didn't want to bring it up. But.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. You know what? BB Edit has been around forever. It is the text editor for the Macintosh. And if you're not using it, get it. You can try it.
And I appreciate that. Without giving too much away, we're working on an update. And there are no secrets here. It's been in public beta on the BB Edit Talk Google group for a while. And we've made a change to the demo model, and so you have a chance to try it out.
Nice.
Before we release it.
Nice.
That's all I'm going to say.
Also, I'm a journalist, so my friendship with Rich means that I have to be honest. I have to point something out to my readers and my listeners. He didn't know he was going to be podcasting today. He kind of rushed it. So I think you can actually see some samples of the BB Edit watch on the background from his feed there.
Oh,
he forgot to put the curtain over it.
Oh, the new BB Edit watch. Ooh.
Just hide the backdrop.
Seriously, Linux version. Rich, what do you think? Any chance? A shot?
When Linux becomes a platform where people can make a living, I am all over.
God, I'd love to have it.
I heard that this is the year of Linux on the desktop.
It actually may.
Leo's desktop.
It actually may be. I feel like we've really made some progress, and the only reason is there are a lot of editors. There's Atom from GitHub. There's Sublime, which has always been great, but they're all wonky compared to BB Edit. You are still the gold standard. Damn it.
Sorry.
That's okay. You know what? With the new file system, some of the changes Apple's making to macOS, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. I'm glad to see. My real fear, one of the reasons I started looking more seriously at desktop Linux is I was afraid Apple was kind of losing interest in OS X, and it doesn't look that way now. It really feels like macOS is a happening thing. And it's very grateful to Apple for doing that, making that real. Our show today brought to you by the folks that host my website. It's web hosting and web software that gives you the best possible experience. I'm talking about Squarespace. If you go to leolaporte.com, you'll see my Squarespace site. It started, they got me in there, with the cover page feature. I thought, well, that's easy. I can just make a cover page, tells people where to find my Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and I can put some slideshow up there. Oh, this is fun. Oh, and you start doing that, and that was so easy. And now, maybe I want to put a blog in there and a calendar and a photo portfolio, and it's all there, and I love it. Squarespace, it's so easy. The best hosting, it never, ever goes down. They are so committed to your uptime. By the way, my site is not an example of how beautiful Squarespace could be, but maybe your site will be because they give you these incredible templates. And what's great about the Squarespace templates is not only they're the top designers making these, but the engineering underneath is state-of-the-art. And with the web, as I have learned at great expense, keeping up with the state-of-the-art is not easy. It is not inexpensive. Let them do the work. Let them hire the designers, the engineers. Let them give you that mobile responsive design that means one website serves any size screen and looks great on every single size. Let them do the e-commerce so you don't have to. If you want to sell, every Squarespace template has commerce built in. Whether you're a designer, a photographer, a filmmaker, and I have to say, people who are artists are particularly in love with Squarespace because it aesthetically, it feeds you. It gives you a page that looks like your aesthetic. Musicians love it, but also bloggers love it. Squarespace has a design for you. And if you're doing a newsletter or a magazine, they have these 5 new magazine-style templates that are, I mean, again, this is great. I mean, this is the current state-of-the-art in web design, the grid-style landing page, the infinite scroll, the related posts at the bottom, all of that. And you don't have to hire a designer. They did the work to make it look incredible. You also get author profiles and a search field in the header. Lets the readers get to where this is great. Why create a content management system when Squarespace has done it all for you? And by the way, they do sell domains now. So if you have an idea, but you really aren't ready to create the website, they have 200 different top-level domains, not just .com, .net, but everything. You can buy it from Squarespace Domains, and you get a gorgeous, clean, spam-free parking page so that you don't have to do anything. You've got the page, and then when you're ready to start building, you just get right down to it. If you are a Squarespace regular, and I know many of us are, if you've created 3 or more active Squarespace websites, you can access the new Squarespace Circle. This is kind of cool. It's kind of a frequent flyer club for Squarespace members. It includes advanced guides, optimized support, 6-month trial periods for new projects, and more. Lots of pros have built businesses using Squarespace as their hosting and as their commerce, as their design. You should try it. Go to squarespace.com. Free trial available right there. When you decide to buy, all I ask, use the offer code MacBreak, and you'll get 10% off, and they will say, oh, okay, you came from MacBreak. They've been advertising. You know, you see Squarespace in a lot of podcasts now, but they started with us before anybody else. They've been advertising with us for 6 or 7 years now, a long time. And we're just very happy to be partnering in partnership with Squarespace. Squarespace.com. Don't forget the offer code MacBreak. Differential privacy. Okay, so I love the ideas. Here's Apple's conundrum. We want to give you all of the great features that Google now provides. We would love to scan your email and give you, automatically put your boarding passes and your flight itinerary into an app, but we don't. Our selling point is security and privacy, and it's really how we sell against Android and Facebook and other things. But we would like to do this, and in fact, they said, it was kind of a Me Too moment. Yes, we've got our machine learning. What do they call it? Deep learning.
Deep learning.
Same thing.
Yep.
Yes, we've got that, but we've figured out a way, based on research from a professor at University of Pennsylvania, they quoted him, to aggregate information about our users without invading their personality. They call it differential privacy. Rene, what the hell is that?
It's super interesting. So Apple's been doing machine learning and artificial intelligence for years. If you look at the way they do traffic modeling, if you look at the way they've done Siri, all of that requires a huge amount of data that then improves the quality of those services. But the problem is that no one could really scale this. You had to make very individual silos. You couldn't sort of look for any patterns.
Well, news is an example, because when they released news, they said,
yes,
and we will adjust news based on your preferences. If you show by clicking on these articles that you like this kind of stuff, we'll give you more of it. Well, how you going to do that? And if you don't share the data with the cloud, how you going to do it on my iPad and my iPhone? That's the challenge.
They didn't share it, and they didn't share it between their own services either. I mean, they had that whole thing on there. So differential privacy has been something that has been in the academic community for a while, and you can go find the papers of the doctor that they mentioned. It's really high level, brilliant.
He wrote the book, as they said.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's way beyond my mathematical.
Well, what's interesting is he's not just asserting that so it's anonymizing data.
Yeah, so what it does is they get some really, really good examples. So let's say we have Rich and we have Andy, and one of them believes in using spaces, and one of them believes in using tabs in their code. And this is a vicious argument. This is a vicious argument.
By the way, Rich, spaces or tabs?
Tabs.
Oh, God! All right, go ahead.
So this is the actual example Apple gave.
See what your wife thought she would say.
Apple said that they wanted to find out what their developers did, so they were going to actually analyze this data, but they didn't want anyone to know who answered what because wars would start, friendships would be destroyed, marriages would end. So they needed to do it in a way that was anonymous. So what happens is they take the data and they add noise to it, and then that data gets uploaded to Apple, and there's enough noise that they can't really tell who you are, but when they step back and they get enough quantity samples, a pattern still emerges. And they figured out that I think it was 60% of people use spaces or some number like that.
Yeah, that by itself is not useful. What you really want to know is what is Rich's preference so we can put that across the board. And they can even do that without de-anonymizing Rich, which I find fascinating.
It's a really bad example, but if you ever look at those paintings that look like just a bunch of dots, but then you get to the perfect distance and suddenly it's a horse.
Yeah.
But then you
they did give, the professor does give an example.
Yeah.
Frequently in a job application, you're asked, have you ever been arrested for a crime? And what you'd like to do is answer that without answering that. In other words, so what they do is they give you two, this is a very rudimentary example. They give you two questions. The first question is flip a coin. If it's heads, lie in the next question. If it's tails, tell the truth in the next question.
Yes.
And then the next question is, have you ever been arrested for committing a crime? They can't. So now they've got a lot of data, but it's fuzzed because we don't know if Rene answered truthfully or lied. But we can statistically look at that data, eliminate the coin results, and know. Furthermore, apparently there's some way to know without identifying whether you as an individual did or didn't. It's bizarre. It's mathematical. And the final point I want to make is he says, and this is the important thing, because you can make a lot of claims. We've heard claims that, we remember Netflix anonymized the data about what movies you watched, and then some bright reporter put it together with IMDb and said, well, that's clearly yours. And so that metadata was sufficient that you could identify somebody. They say this is mathematically provable to be unidentifiable.
And the super interesting thing is that if you're in a high-density city like San Francisco, they don't have to add as much noise because there's so many people around you that the data set is complicated enough. But if you're in a rural community and there's very few people doing what you're doing, they add a much more noise because it is much easier to sort of figure out the individuals there. But it's also rate controlled. So if you're hitting that system over and over and over again, it becomes easier to identify you. So they stop taking data at a certain point to make sure that they can identify you just based on frequency of use of a similar service at a similar time. So they're doing several vectors there to make sure that data is as anonymous as possible. And the result is you get a huge sampling set and the ability to do that statistical analysis without that being back. You can't go back the other way. It's like a one-way mirror. You can see through it, but you can't go back to it and find out the individual people or what their individual preferences are. Again, super fascinating stuff. And they do it at scale. It's baked into the system, which is also interesting. It's not just a one-off for a certain app.
Right.
I got the most frustrating response to a tech email, which is that actually this is someone I know who would know what they're talking about. They are in research. They know of this. So that's really exciting. I can tell you all about it, but I'm actually on vacation now, so we can talk next week. And I'm like, okay.
And Apple has been a little bit, they've been not completely forthright about how they're applying this. They use the phrase differential privacy and hashing, and they refer to the professor, but that was that.
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks still in this, and one of the biggest ones still is how is this automatically better than whatever Google is doing right now? Because I think that Google has demonstrated that at least with the data you give them, it doesn't leave Google in any meaningful way. They will sell access to you from the outside, but they will not sell the information they use to give an outside person access to you. And we have millions and billions of people that are perfectly fine with that relationship with Google and Facebook. So
that's part of the issue too. Is that Facebook Messenger issue, which is a lot of people don't care.
Yep.
Yeah, and also two other things from this is that Apple has to. This is the first time that Apple has really talked about artificial intelligence and the words they use to get around so they wouldn't be using deep learning. whereas Google has used this as a tentpole feature of here is what you get when you use Google products and services. So that's not this. So the fact that your data is being hashed and anonymized is not the thing that people are going to be really, really interested in seeing. They're going to be, hey, I have my husband, my wife has an Android phone, and they swipe left to the Google Now page, and it has everything that is important to them at that moment, almost as though this device is psychic. Apple, what products and services are going to give me to make my phone as useful as that? So it's, but on the other side of that is that Apple got a lot of flack a few weeks ago after the Google I/O keynote about how, oh, Apple is losing the AI war. They're using the intelligence war. We just don't. Apple does not work the way that Google works. Their artificial intelligence and their ability to analyze data and make good use of it on behalf of the users could be at least as good as Google's, but you would never know about it because they're not making that a promotable thing. So we're going to have to see exactly how things work. A lot of when they talked about photos, for instance, they introduced a lot of features that seemed awfully similar to anybody who's been using Google Photos for the past year. But we're going to have to see how well they implement that. I really do think that if people realize that I can do a search on Google Photos for a picture of my Aunt Ophelia in front of some sort of old building holding a dog and get a search result, and with Google you can say, with the Apple you can only say lady, animal, color, and get 20 responses of which 3 are correct. They're not going to care so much about hash. I'm more interested in this as sort of like when you see the lock sign on the top of a web page, and you are assured by that okay, whatever I'm doing on this web page, if I'm logging in and typing in secure financial data, that green lock informs me that it's being done in a secure fashion. If this were an open standard, that Google will say, okay, fine, we can do that too. We can also do everything we need to do with our business with that. Thank you, Apple, for letting people, for developing this and promoting this, because we just simply added the mauve lock that also says that your data is being anonymized and hashed. So it's just like the new file system. This is interesting stuff. We're going to have to sit on this and look at it for another year to find out whether it's actually important to users the way it's implemented.
Yeah, I just like that we have options. I mean, I think that's really important for consumers. And like when the Edward Snowden thing broke, I didn't really know the extent of surveillance. And at one point, you're like, well, they're just doing surveillance. But then he's like, well, a couple of my friends are checking out their ex-girlfriends. And and that's the kind of revelations you get. And I trust Google. I use Google services all the time. But you're only ever one smoking whistleblower away from going, yeah, all my friends at Google are scanning through all the bikini pictures and doing yada yada yada. And then suddenly these things really matter to you. And if you had no alternative, it was all Facebook and Google and some other maybe a LinkedIn-based service, that would be it. It would just be the reality in which we live. But even if this provides partial service, not as much as Google, as a consumer, I might be paranoid. I might be incredibly paranoid, unreasonably paranoid, but at least I have an option to assuage my paranoia.
I'm thrilled to have the choice. However, I want to make sure that Apple's not just doing hand-waving and marketing speak, that there's some action, that they're actually doing this. For instance, Craig Federighi said in this photos thing, it's all done on device.
Yes.
That doesn't, I don't think that makes any sense. Yes, the processor's powerful enough. You might argue that there's not enough RAM on the device, certainly not as much as you could get on the cloud. But more importantly, all your pictures, you may have many pictures in the cloud that are not on your device.
Yeah, but the thing is,
can it really be on device? They start on the device is not the same as saying it's all on the device.
Well, remember that the full-size versions of these photos are not on your device, but usable thumbnails and usable screen-level versions of them are on the device.
Of all my photos?
Of anything that's going to be accessible by this. I've realized that any conversation we're having today, we're talking about like 24 hours after getting information. I have spoken to what might be termed a source very close to this project. And the way that this person explained it to me, I'm looking for the email right now so I can surf out anything that I might be able to say. Well,
you're asking the right question, though. You're asking the same question I am. Basically, and I do not mean, I mean this as a flat comment. Sometimes at this level, I have to ask dumb questions about the new file system. I have to ask dumb questions about this anonymization. I have to ask dumb questions about how this all works on device, because it is such a big concept that it comes contrary to what we understand about how things work. So suffice to say that they believe that it will work fine on device.
and that when you if there that there will not be a need to go off device for that, and they can do that without compromising the amount of storage that's available on your device. So it's not as though they're going to have a corpus of data that should be living off someplace else, and they have to make sure that that lives on your device itself. The question that I need to refine, I'm just being open here, is the airplane question, which is, what if you are on the airplane, all your radios are turned off? What will this be able to do with search of the data that's on my device, and what can it? Because it's not just the data that's on your device; it's the history of everything that you have put into this device and this service over the past couple of years. So a lot of questions remain unanswered, but I did get an answer to the question that this should work all on device. It's not as though you will have you have reached the end of the internet. Please turn back when you try to use something.
And it's not some special meaning of on device, some special Apple meaning of on device.
I don't.
No, they bought a company.
For now, I don't believe so.
They bought a company, I think it was from France, a little while ago, that specialized on doing on-device object recognition and landscape recognition. And it was fairly good, and they have the benefit of having custom silicon that in many ways is optimized for things that just off-the-shelf silicon isn't. So they're spending currency that they get based on their hardware advantage.
I certainly do not gainsay the fact that there's a super fast processor in there, but I question. I mean, for instance, is there hinting done? I mean, is your phone in the background always working on these photos? It would make much more sense. It'd be much more efficient for this to be done server side.
Well, it can remember that part of this technology is that it can ask questions of a server and get a response back without compromising the security of the data or of the user. So it really will be a question of what happens when I go board the plane, I turn things off, I've got 1,000 photos accessible in my on-device library, and I want to find Aunt Estelle in front of an alpaca outside during sunlight. Can it be able to surface that for me automatically? Will it still be able to, if I've taken a cajillion photos during my vacation, remember that one of the coolest features that they demonstrated is we're going to try to figure out what these moments are like and what these experiences were like and collate them together. Will I be able to replay my week in Branson, Missouri without having to wait for something to cache back from a server? We just don't know this sort of stuff. But it's been explained at the first grade level that to me that I believe that it will work. I just don't know the details.
Yeah, I don't doubt that the processor is fast enough, but that's not the only constrained resource on a phone. And battery life is a significantly constrained resource. You don't want the phone churning on stuff in the background.
Yeah, but
I have a feeling we got to keep looking at this, because I have a feeling what's going to come out is it's mostly on device.
I don't think they do it that way, but I will say that we've been talking about this really for the past 2 generations of iPads and iPhones, that the CPUs seem suspiciously overpowered for what they seem to be doing today. So I believe there's still enough overhead left for them to do that kind of crunching on device. And
it's not just CPUs either.
Yeah.
Say again?
It's not just CPUs either. Current handheld devices, iPhones and iPads in context, have tremendous amounts of hardware on them. There is a CPU whose capabilities should not be underestimated. There are GPUs which keep getting faster and faster and able to do more and more per clock cycle. The cameras, the pipelines between the camera and the rest of the machine is pretty big. So I can, and I say this without any direct knowledge, but I can imagine a situation in which camera data is analyzed as it flows out of the camera into the rest of the machine. And you can do that pretty efficiently with the sort of vector unit that you'll find in GPUs these days, in the GPUs on the device. So that same hardware that, for example, makes gameplay really amazing on these devices can be used for other purposes. But it doesn't for mass parallel data analysis.
Certainly. I'll give you an example, though. I take photos with a variety of cameras. All of them get uploaded to Google Photos, where it, in server side, does all of this deep artificial intelligence analysis and finds all the gorillas in the mist. And that works quite well. Apple won't be able to do that, or will they? I think
they probably don't care to aggregate all your cameras.
Yeah, well, but iPhoto does it not? So
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, so it's a company called Perceptio that they bought, and they specialized in deep learning that didn't require linking to external databases in order to identify the contents of a scene. So it wasn't that it wasn't online, it's that it didn't have to go and commingle your data with other data
that's the kind of fudge words that I'm thinking of. Like, well, we're not commingling data, but I mean, all right.
Well,
I'm skeptical, and I think it's great to say, well, there's all sorts of magic in the phone. It's completely possible. I'd like to see evidence.
Well,
and
here's the
I'm just
question, like on your point, Leo, like if you have photos on your iPad and on your iPhone, does it have to identify them on each separate device?
Right.
Does it have a method of identifying them, placing that data in there, syncing it to iCloud photo library, and then when it comes back down to your iPad, it already has that data, or does it have to go back and recrunch everything on every device that you put every photo on? Because it really wants to be local and local only. And those are sort of, that's a use case that's probably not ideal for people.
One thing we had heard, there was a rumor that the iCloud would become a trust no one system. Did they say, I can't remember if they said that only you will have the key to your iCloud data? Or does Apple still have the key?
Almost the opposite. They created a sharing, I forget what it's called, KC share or CK share, where you can now fine-grain control permissions of who gets access to what part of your iCloud.
Interesting.
So you can make
you
something
could choose
public,
it to be that
private,
way. Yeah.
some things you could share with friends.
That's a good way to do it, because then you can say, look, I'm privacy focused and I'm willing to give up functionality for full privacy and make that choice on the phone. Believe me, look, I mean, I use Google and I share everything and I don't really care, and I'm not that privacy focused. But what I don't want to do is just let Apple off the hook in asserting that it protects privacy. I want to see the details. It's there's a difference between marketing speak and actually doing.
The iOS 10 security white paper is going to be a really good read.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's typical WWDC stuff, where we hear the announcement and then we wait for the rest of the week for the sessions, and then a week later we actually have the opportunity for analysis. Right. So really, really interesting demo. Also, it's also, by the way, interesting in how it can make Apple products more saleable through enterprise and particularly through government. Ars Technica had a really interesting article, I think it was just posted today, speculating that Obama has switched from his BlackBerry to a Samsung Galaxy S4 because he was on the Jimmy Fallon show, and Jimmy Fallon made a joke about, hey, you're still using a BlackBerry, loser. And he said, no, I've switched to a smartphone now. I'm not using the BlackBerry anymore. And because the only smartphone that has been approved by the Defense Department agency that provides communications equipment to the White House is the S4, partly because of how strong a lot of the encryption, a lot of the privacy and security is, plus, of course, the ability for the DoD to actually add and modify stuff to it, because I think you need something better than what people use to protect their nudie pics on their device. This could be an investment in the future for Apple to be able to say that, look, whatever rule you have to come up with to be able to use our devices in a hospital, to be able to use our devices in a government facility, to use the devices when you're an analyst who is being entrusted with really, really secure, world-changing, market-changing data, we are able to meet every single one of those things. We are the most secure private device on the planet because of A, B, C, D, E.
It's kind of sad that the president has to use an S4.
No, it's probably the certification is like, remember they have to get.
I understand it takes years. I mean, that's a 3-year-old phone. I understand, and then they also there's all sorts of stuff that has to go on. I understand.
They used to have a secure phone that was Windows Mobile. Even
I know the first phone he got 8 years ago was a Windows Mobile
NSA,
phone.
Right?
Yeah.
I think something else that's going on behind the scenes, and this was actually in the news not long ago, is Apple hired this individual named John Callis. And his remit is unclear, but he is a longtime, deeply competent expert in things security and cryptographic.
He's from Silent Circle, which is...
He's from Silent Circle. He's from PGP.
Yeah. I mean, and what's interesting is his experience is in open source in crypto, and the best crypto out there right now.
Yeah, but not just that. User experiences and sort of this intersection between crypto and user experience, which has always been a difficult one.
Yeah.
He started his career in the 80s at Digital Equipment, and he knows of what he speaks and he knows of what he does, and he is going to be working with a bunch of other really deeply competent people. And I think that says a lot about how invested Apple is in this in these issues, in the issues of data privacy and data security, not just in the wake of the San Bernardino phone thing, but I think generally as it relates to their customers. It's important to them. They might consider user data to be an asset from which revenue can be derived. That's what Google does. But I think the fashion in which they go about deriving revenue from customer data is going to be very different. They seem to be interested in driving hardware sales. They want to use their customer data to create software experiences, which in turn drive hardware sales.
It's a tough conundrum for Apple because, of course, the most useful insights into customers would require, invading in their privacy. Mm-hmm. And Google's and Facebook have shown a complete willingness to do that, and they'd like to not do that, but still provide some utility.
I forgot to mention the subject of open source. Apple open sourced their new compression technology yesterday. I forgot how to pronounce it. Zimful something or other.
Zimful. It's about time.
Yeah.
Why does every compression algorithm have a Russian name somewhere?
The funniest one is Brotli, which is Google's new compression format, which sounds like broccoli but is not.
Yeah.
It's twice as tasty.
Are those XIP files?
I don't. What is this new format? This new.
It was the one they announced last year.
Lempel Ziv is the current LZ system. This is a update to that.
Yeah, and I'm totally blank on the name because it's a bunch of gobbledygook initials. It sounds like Mitzelplick to me every time I hear it. But, yeah, but it was announced.
Oh, LZFSE, that?
Yes.
Lempel Ziv finite state entropy, that?
Yes.
Oh, here we go. An XIP file is a digitally signed archive.
Ah. See, there's a huge, I think, area that would be, very valuable. I mean, we've got, it all goes hand in hand. There's security, there's privacy, and there's authentication. Mm-hmm. And strong authentication is something I would love to see these companies work harder on. It is the source of it's a huge. Well, for instance, we've been talking about should Apple have a thumbprint reader on its new MacBooks?
It may or may not, but they're allowing you to do continuity.
I love that, right?
Yeah. So the big problem with Bluetooth trusted devices, and they've had them for years, is that if Andy had one, I could just take it off, put it on my shirt, and go and unlock his computer because the device had no idea of identity. But your Apple Watch has, your Apple Watch has Bluetooth. It can be a Bluetooth smart device, and they're doing very, 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 very close. So you can't be 30 feet away or 100 feet away. You have to be really proximal. But it's on your wrist. It knows your pulse, and that means that it's sure you're still using it, and then it will just unlock your Mac for you. Or you can do Touch ID on your phone, and it will hand off that to your Mac. So it's bringing both the biometrics and the Bluetooth trusted object. It's something you have and something you are added to the equation.
Yeah, it's a really good Apple type solution where they're willing to give you a partial solution, but the parts that they give you are absolutely spot on. Rather than, it's great if you have an Apple Watch or an Apple iPhone. We will let you use it if you have an Amazon Echo to make sure you don't have to sign in when you're at home. But we're not going to let you do that. We're going to only do the things we're absolutely sure about.
So the chat room is saying that they're delivering the new Xcode in XIP format. Is that true? What is this XIP? What do we have to get a new? Do we have to get a new decryptor?
So an XIP is, at the risk of oversimplifying slightly, an XIP is a digitally signed zip file.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the internals yet, but from what I can tell so far, it's a zip file with an embedded digital signature.
So, for instance, right now, if you download software, an operating system, say Microsoft's new Windows 10, you download a hash that's associated with the file, and then you have to run it through something like PGP to verify the signature. But there's 3 different steps. It would be great if it were all included in one thing. You could unzip it and verify the not only the origin of the file, but its integrity. That's cool.
Correct.
So does and clearly Apple builds that into the OS, so you don't have to get any additional software.
It's built in the OS. It looks like it's been there since 10.9.
Huh. And how do we pronounce it? Xip?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because it's like a zip file. Will it replace zip files?
Can't tell you. I so far it hasn't, right? It's been there since 10.9, and zip files are still
It's a great idea, though.
And it looks as though I have to do some experimentation here, because it looks as though this is intended to distribute software, because you provide the same sort of code signing identity that you would as though you were building an application.
Perfect. Because that's exactly the issue. You know, there's so much trust involved in installing software anyway. But if I get Rich's new program, I would love to make sure that there's been no man in the middle. Somebody hasn't injected code into it, modified it. It's a big problem in open source software. This happened with Linux Mint, because the software is open source. You can download the Mint code, add your own little thing, recompile it as a blob, and then, as they did, redirect everybody from the Mint site to your Turkish site with a new blob.
It happened with the installer a little while ago too.
Did it?
Yeah, one of the I forget. I don't want to say the wrong one.
No, it was Linux Mint. Yeah, and you'd download the ISO, but it turned out it was getting it from a Turkish site, and it had modified code, and of course it was caught pretty quickly because of this signing thing. But it'd be really good if the ISOs were now in XIPs, and you could validate it that it was not just from the right source, but not modified. It would be great. And I could see why Apple would. That'd be great. Apple could take the lead in something like that. Let's talk about Apple Music, redesigned. That new design language that Andy was talking about, which looks a little like Material Design, big text, no more drop shadows, no more rounded corners. No,
I wouldn't say it looks like Material so much. It seems a lot more purposeful than stock iOS, where you see my difficulty with iOS on the phone has always been it doesn't do anything in a dramatic fashion to say, here is the important thing on this screen, here is what we think you're going to want to look at, or here is the button that we think that you're going to want to push to do the thing that we think that you want to use this for. But you see the same design language in the new Music app, in the new News app, and in the new Home app, where there is not just bold but like black letterface to give you to take you to different sections of the thing.
St. Bose, by the way, who was
there's
so good. She has quadrupled her Twitter followers, by the way, since we talked about her.
I was using number 4,460 something.
Yeah, she's over almost 12,000 now.
There you go. Monetize it. So it really does seem like unlock your phone, wake it up, see the thing you want to do, push the button. There's a lot more color in it. I've been looking at the screenshots. I don't have the developer stuff yet, so I haven't actually looked at any of these apps. But it really does seem like more of less of a 1978 East German bleak, West German bleak film sort of thing that I see the regular OS has. So it's I'm hoping this is something they're experimenting with, and we might see.
This is Werner Herzog designed.
It's very, windswept plain with someone who's wearing a colorful gray sweater, but still with a dour expression. He is holding one stick that's been painted black in his open hand, because it actually represents the bird that he crushed accidentally as a child. So he carries this stick. That's the impression I get when I actually look at iOS on a phone. There's no joy in it. And
but it's super functional.
Right. Basically, yeah. It's
Swiss Railway functional.
It's like the difference between the presenter we had on music versus the presenter that most Apple presenters we have. It's like, oh, I'm paying attention, I'm engaged, I'm listening. This person seems to be excited about this thing that they want to talk about, as opposed to, in 1975, 2 students at the University of Iowa had a new data collection standard. And then it's like,
By the way, her Twitter handle, Bozoma St. John, is Saint BOZ, and we'd love to get her over 12,000. She is. What's great is her title is Head Diva of Global Consumer Marketing. So she's and she was awesome.
She was terrific.
Man, I think that she should just do all Apple keynotes from now on.
She had so many selfie requests after the thing.
Yeah, well, I guess.
I think she's booked on Ellen tomorrow. I don't think she is. I don't think Twit's on podcasts.
Yeah, I don't think Twit's really. She had him clapping and dancing. So the new Apple Music also distinguishes very clearly between songs that you're streaming from Apple's site and songs that are on your phone, which would, I think, help people like Jim Dalrymple with confusion over, is this my music or is this music from the Apple library? What is this? What is the source of this music? She's showing here how you can see the lyrics to Rapper's Delight as you're listening. I like that feature. A lot of players.
Only Rapper's Delight, though, nothing else.
Yeah, only Rapper's Delight.
Well, that's all you. And
But let's
also,
face it,
frankly,
that is all you need.
And you don't stop.
if you grew up
Andy,
in that-
don't get
that
him
era-
started. Andy did the whole thing. He did the whole song.
I am very proud during the live thing where I was like, when the song was playing, I was rapping before she pulled up the lyrics.
You
and
knew
then
it.
After she said, "Wait a minute, why is nobody rapping along?" I said, "I'm rapping along. Look, I'm cool." or
Actually,
I was
it's
a
Rapper's
suburban
Delight
teenager during
and the
80s.
entire Tom Lehrer catalog.
There you go. I take both, you know. So that's an improvement. But, you know, we were expecting like this, you know, they were hinting at this massive redesign. They didn't add new channels. It still Beats One is the radio channel. They didn't.
Well, I think it's a functional redesign. Listen to the presentation and compare it to how they presented it last year, where they really last year's presentation really seemed like, hey, we've created this entire planet that we're moving you onto, and now you're all going to be citizens of planet Apple Music Land. You're welcome. This one seemed focused on you have interest in your music, and you know what you wanted to listen to at any one time. They only talked about Beats One near the end, and of course saying that they think it's the most popular radio station on the planet right now. Okay, that's his maybe. But really the focus was on to make it sound more like a stock music player than as a revolution that we are shanghaiing you into. And so it really did fill you with optimism that if I were to switch back to Apple Music, I would have the Andy Ihnatko focused music player that I've been wanting on the iPhone all along.
We've
So
also
I do think it's a big change.
We've also been waiting for more curation, more curated playlists. This is something Jimmy Iovine said would be very important to the Beats platform's transformation to Apple Music, and they seemed like they were.
It's a war of escalation. Like a friend, one of my colleagues, Daniel Bader, was saying that it felt like when this came out, Spotify was like, "Oh, you want to see curation? Here's our version of creation." And now Apple Music's like, "Really? We'll curate your Monday." And, you know,
Right.
You get like individual daily.
Here's
play.
Monday. Yeah.
And that's great for us because the harder they work at this, they're literally competing to make us happier, and that is the best situation we could be in.
Yeah. Yeah. Hop to the hippity hop.
You don't stop a rocking to the band boogie. See, up jump the boogie to the rim of the boogie beat. Now, what you hear is not a test. I'm rapping to the beat. Me, the groove, and my friends are going to try to move your feet, etc.
You just had to do it, didn't you?
I was wondering.
I'm like Cartman with Come Sail Away. It's like now that I've started Rapper's Delight, I have to do the commercial. I have to play to the end before I can move forward.
No iTunes announcement. I kind of thought they might announce an updated iTunes. They
Typically in the fall, iTunes gets slated in.
Oh man. And our long national nightmare continues.
Well, so like again, like I had this conversation before, but we were talking about it this week. Everyone says fix iTunes, but if we said, okay, Rich Siegel, now you've got to fix iTunes, and now please remember that Andy's niece bought her iPod Nano, and she's syncing it over a cable to Windows. Leo works for Virgin Records, and he has to upload every single one of their catalogs every Tuesday, make sure all the data's in there, and that everybody can buy those things.
Rich
We've got
could
$1 billion
do that.
of transactions going through there every month, and we can't lose a penny.
Okay,
now please fix iTunes.
Let's all feel sorry for Apple that only has $240 billion in cash to throw at any one problem.
It's
that has
hard.
tens of millions of
right?
people.
Music is
add an
hard.
No one is saying that this is an easy problem to solve, but we would like to see that instead of saying, oh, here's an iTunes update, and it is exactly the same as the iTunes we've had for several years now that we've hated and we haven't been using for a while. We'd like to see at least there is a letter.
Here's the big change. We're putting the sidebar
yeah.
back after we took it out.
So I acknowledge that iTunes is Apple's XP, but I do not want Apple's Vista. So I want something to happen where almost like Apple.com, where there was this horrible web object space. They had to take the store down, do all these horrible things, and we all hated it. And then one day we woke up and there was this beautiful new version of Apple.com's store. And when you have this giant bridge that's collapsing, you can't just take it down because then no one can cross the island. You build a second bridge, and that sometimes takes a while. And then hopefully one day they'll come in and go, hi, I'm Eddie Q, and here's a new iTunes, and boom. And then we just go through that demo. And they have to move a lot of things. Like maybe we need iTunes for iCloud and App Store for iCloud and be able to move all that infrastructure to the web before we can decouple it from Windows and decouple it from a monolithic app. And we're seeing those pieces. Like the more they move Apple Music online, the less dependent they are on local clients. And it seems like, I think he was really sincere when he was on the talk show last year with John Gruber saying that it is an incredibly difficult thing to do, and they're doing it in a step-by-step manner, because that's unusual for Apple. Usually they're like, oh, I work for Mac, throw it away. Final Cut Pro, throw it away. iMovie. A traditional Apple approach would be burn iTunes down and just here's a new version and it's missing all the features, and 3 years from now you'll stop yelling at us. iTunes is one of those few things where there's so many dependencies. I think we'll see a gradual rollout.
Yeah, so we have Zach is in the audience for Big Nerd Ranch. He's one of their iOS guys, teaches iOS programming, and he's got a wire coming out of his watch. I think, what are you doing? Is your watch dead? He said, no, I'm installing the new watchOS, and it has to be connected to power. So I think that's awesome. Install on, my friend. Install on. It's those Milanese loop expands beautifully. It's as if it was intended to do that, made to do that. So Rene, let's talk about. I know Rene is a big watch fan.
Yes.
And finally, more than just new bands for you. watchOS 3 looks pretty good. I have to say, some nice new features. I like Breathe. I'll be using that a lot.
Yeah,
whenever you talk about
iTunes.
iTunes.
I mean, that's the first lesson whenever Georgia gets started with her psychology stuff is the breathing things. But for me, it's like the features are great. Like I love it. I love the instead of time to stand, time to ride for people in wheelchairs.
Isn't that nice? You know, I hadn't really thought about that, and just shows how kind of unthoughtful we are. What if you're in a wheelchair and you got every hour you got this reminder, time to stand up? Like, it just make me cry.
Throw your watch after. Yeah. The thing that was so cool is that beyond the features, it was this coherence mode for the Apple Watch. They rethought it. It's sort of, what should an app be? Do we need glances in apps? And now sort of an app is a glance. And if you put it in your dock, it prioritizes it and makes sure that it stays in memory so it launches instantly. It gives it background access so the data is refreshed when it does launch. And it's the thing I love. It's like Apple, even with the iPhone, it's not, we're going to just turn on Unix-style multitasking and bye-bye battery life. It's what can we do to make sure you have what you want when you need it with conserving as many resources as possible. And I
hope that instant launch really works. I hope that's real. Is it going to pre-cache apps?
Yeah, so I'm running it now, and it seems to work. And I'm on the first beta, and it seems to work pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah. So it prioritizes it. Like the things you have in your dock are updated in real time, so you can see them like glances. But instead of having glances and apps, they sort of serve the same purpose. And it caches that data and gets those apps ready to launch immediately, but also gives them those background refresh APIs so that they can pull down data and make sure it's ready for you when you want them.
Rich, do you wear an Apple Watch? Are you an Apple Watch guy? Oh, there he is. Sport band.
Yeah, it's the sport band that came with it. I have a leather band, and I have what do they call it, the Milanese loop. Oh, and also, this will bring back memories for you, Leo.
Ooh. That's the one that Twistoflex. It catches your hair.
Twistoflex.
Yeah. They make a Twistoflex for the Apple Watch. I'll buy it.
No, there's a third party. Let me hold this up.
It does give you Brazilian wrist. It tears the hair out.
A third party lugs.
Oh, that you put on an existing.
You can buy, and they let you adapt any watch band to use on the Apple Watch. And so yes, I have a Twistoflex.
Takes you back, doesn't it? Yeah. I can't believe I remembered the brand name.
and the jingle.
And the jingle.
I did like the announcement that the dock is pretty much like one of the most important things that they could have done with it. And I don't think they could have done it with the initial release because they had a problem with preloading stuff and making sure they can get things. Imagine how frustrated you get when you launch an app and you see the wait cursor. Imagine swiping to move to the next app and seeing the wait cursor. So obviously they have a lot of faith in how fast they can do switching. It's a nicely done, nicely implemented version of it where it will work like the regular phone dock where it will keep your most recently used apps in the carousel in order. But you can also go into the phone app and basically declare that here are apps that you should always have in the dock at all times. So you can declare that like your Strava app or declare that your flight app will always be in the dock and thus will always get access to background stuff. It'll always be refreshed in the background. I still think it doesn't go far enough to give the watch a sense of purpose, but they've definitely taken the pain in the butt, thrown in a drawer in anger level of the Apple Watch down from maybe a 7 to maybe a 5 or 4.
We said when the Apple Watch came out that Apple would learn a lot, and it could only learn that by watching people use it. And it feels like now with watchOS 3, these are... For instance, they know now, oh, you only really use 5 apps, so we can pre-cache those apps.
You can swipe between faces, and those faces have complications, and they can do things like activities, like right on the watch face.
Yeah, we see what people are doing with it, and now we understand better what it is. When you introduce a new category, you really don't know what it is. You have to give it to users and see what they do with it.
At the sensors, they haven't talked about third-party watch faces?
No.
Yeah, so there's a gallery in the Watch app that lets you. So it's on the new Watch app in iOS 10. There's a gallery, and it's actually sorted by app. And I forget what the demo screen they put up was, but it was maybe Lyft or something. And you can sort of see they're not customized faces, but they show everything that app can do to that watch face, and then you can pick from the alternatives. So like you can have a very Lyft-heavy app watch face, for example, or a very activity-heavy watch face.
Rich, what do you
still something that.
Go ahead, Andy, and then I'll talk.
I'll say it quickly. I know we're running late, but I still think that the watch is not going to be 80% complete until third-party watch faces come in. I still think that's they're talking about personalizing the watch bands. We see how important that is to make that watch yours. When you only give me 3 or 4 really boring watch faces, and you talk the Swiss Railway.
Got Minnie Mouse. What do you want?
With dresses, and she'll talk to you now.
She'll talk.
If you hold down on it, her and Mickey will tell you the time.
They go.
I don't even joke.
By the way, I'm very excited for next year's WWDC where we're going to see Pluto and Goofy.
Donald.
Yeah.
You know how angry Donald is that Mickey's on the watch and he's not?
Donald would be awesome.
Pantsless watch faces coming in 2017. They're still working on the licensing, but I won't even make jokes about the Minnie Mouse watch face. It's like making the fitness apps compatible with people who use wheelchairs. Just a simple idea that there is a female figure you can put in there.
Are you saying this is diversity?
I'm saying that it's good. You know,
until we have a brown watch face, I'm not going to say there's diversity.
Like I said, I'm not going to joke about
You should be able to choose the shade of Mickey and Minnie.
I think it's impressive how Apple that they wanted to make sure that Minnie's shoes would match the watch band.
So Apple.
You know? So here's Apple. A yellow watch band.
That's
like,
so
okay.
Apple. Jeez Louise.
Progress is our most important product.
They did just open Disneyland Shanghai. I think we could have a Chinese Minnie. I thought, though, that it was very clear that there was, in a lot of ways, a tip of the hat to the Chinese market, a market that's really important to Apple, including the new, where you could draw the Chinese ideograms on the watch face. Yeah.
Oh, that was kind of the keyboard, too. You just draw, and it does recognition, and it's not like graffiti where you have to change the way you write to fit the system. Right. You just write, and it looks really good.
Yeah. Oh, and 911 or SOS, which I think is really great. Except I hope it's hard to trigger. How do you trigger it? Because I had this on my Samsung phone, and I mentioned this yesterday. Lisa kept getting emergency messages from me. She said, "Are you all right?"
You have to hold it down for an extended period of time.
Okay, good. But boy, I've fallen and I can't get up. That's great.
Yeah. I'm in a bad situation.
As somebody who is on the verge of a heart attack all the time, I think this is good. It's going to be a real reason to wear this.
Particularly because it works over Wi-Fi. It works over Wi-Fi, not just cellular. Yeah. So it means that if you're at home, you may have your iPhone upstairs in a charging dock, but you are now in trouble and you have 12 seconds of use. I'm not joking. You might have 12 seconds of useful consciousness,
right?
And you can use that to say, okay, all I'm going to say is help, run now, and you're out.
Awesome. Rich, one of the things I've noticed that people who use the Apple Watch and continue to use it have all found one thing that is the kind of the killer app. What is it that you use your Apple Watch for?
For me, it's notifications.
Yeah.
I generally have my phone close at hand, but I don't always. I might be in a different room from the phone. I might be on a different floor from the phone. I might be driving. And it's much less obtrusive if I get a notification. I just glance at my watch, and it seldom distracts me from what I'm doing. So seeing a text come in, or an instant message, getting a notification from Ring that there's somebody at the front door, like I just did. There's motion at the front door.
I love it's a really good use for the doorbell. We're at the 2-hour mark. I haven't even got to Siri. I haven't got to Apple TV and HomeKit. There's so much more. But I'll tell you, here's what we're going to do. I presume that some or all of you, I know Renee's already doing it. I know Zach's already doing it. We'll download the betas. I am not going to. I'm going to heed Rich's advice and stick with the release versions. But those of you who are developers, and maybe next week we can talk, because I think it would be useful, especially with Siri, to better understand what our new capabilities are by using it. So let's defer that. And I really want to talk about Apple TV and HomeKit because, Apple paid off on that one. We all suspected it was kind of the HomeKit hub. Apple was mum, but they did announce that yesterday, and I think that's very exciting as well.
Paying off some of the. There's a reason why you spent an extra $50 for the new Apple TV as opposed to updated hardware, and this is part of a. On day one, you got the existing Apple TV with a couple little benefits, but now we're seeing here's why you paid the extra $50.
And let's try to get Serenity on next week because I know she has already used HomeKit pretty extensively, right, Rene?
Absolutely.
Yeah, she might have some thoughts about that. So let's take a break. When we come back, picks of the week. And we'll wrap this thing up. Security Now is about 15 minutes away. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Rich Siegel is here, everybody's favorite developer at Barebones Software, the creator of BB Edit. Does Apple still use BB Edit to edit the homepage?
I don't know exactly what they're using it for these days. I have a few friends that work there, and they use it for crunching data. I actually got a message from somebody there today. I know they're using it. I don't know exactly in what capacity they're using it or if they're still using it to specifically work on the homepage. I think it is used on the website sometimes, though.
We know
they're using it, but not exactly what for.
Yeah. I think the safe thing to say is if you have a Macintosh, you should have BB Edit. Just buy it.
I would like that. That would be great.
Just buy it. Yeah. Everybody. We want Rich to be eating meat every week. It's a new goal. It's a new goal for Rich. Maybe even a nice steak.
Meat of the week.
Not just hamburger.
Not mystery meat.
Not mystery meat. Not just a minute steak, but an actual steak.
Upgrade to Deutschmacher bologna, not the store brand.
That's right.
Brand name bologna. Ladies and gentlemen, it's in the future for Rich Siegel. It's great to have you. Rene Ritchie from imore.com. Always the site I go to for more information about anything Apple. It's a great site and great podcast there, too. And, of course, Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. Did you get to file? It was really great to have you on our coverage yesterday.
I did file after I got responses to a couple of different emails, so I filed last night. And I was up late. Then I was up late after that thinking, researching and realized that, wish I could have added that. I could have added that. And, that would have been nice to know 4 hours ago. But yeah, it's a broad spectrum piece that I posted last night.
Let us talk a little bit about Gazelle. Now's the time, of course, to start thinking about new Apple devices, new Apple watches. Maybe get a watch. Maybe sell your old phone. Maybe it's time to get that presidential Galaxy S4 out of your life and get real cash for it by going to Gazelle.com. Simple enough. Gazelle both buys old products and sells them. So let's start with the buy side. They will give you a quote right now. You just go there and show them your old iPod, iPad, iPhone, Samsung, Microsoft, Google device, and they will give you a quote that's guaranteed for 30 days. Now, that's great because that means you have 30 days to decide. They're locked in, but you're not. So here's the deal. Go to Gazelle.com. Enter in not just one, but everything. If you've been throwing your old gadgets into a drawer, that's like throwing $100 bills into a drawer just to gather dust. Get them all out of that drawer. Sell them to Gazelle. Once you've decided to go for it, and as I said, you have 30 days, all you need to do is pull the trigger. They'll send you a box, and they will send you a postage-paid box. Yeah, they pay the postage on anything worth more than $1. And turn it around fast. If you forget to wipe the data, they'll do that for you, no problem. They also buy broken iPhones and iPads because there's a market value to those too, interestingly enough. Go to Gazelle.com to get top dollar on your old gadgets. Then, when it's time to get a new gadget, maybe you want to replace a gadget for somebody in the family, a kid who breaks stuff all the time. Maybe you yourself have decided that you don't want to live with that cracked screen anymore and you want to get a new phone or a new tablet. You can go to Gazelle.com to buy as well. And they've got financing now. This is something new by a firm that you actually could take advantage of right at checkout. You can get instantly approved, pay in 3, 6, or 12 months. Your easy monthly payments can be made through bank transfer, check, or debit card. All you have to do is at checkout select financing with the firm and provide some basic information. They also offer 12-month warranties for cell phones and iPads. That's from Assurant Solutions. It covers even things like water damage, cracked screens, hardware defects, of course. So you got to check it out. This is a great place to save money on some gently used but high quality, completely checked out, and of course 30-day returned policy devices. Gazelle.com. It's guaranteed. Visit Gazelle.com. Give new life to used electronics. Trade it in for cash or buy certified pre-owned at Gazelle.com. Well, I have already given you my pick, BB Edit, and for the cheapskates, Text Wrangler, which is just awesome. I hope you won't be mad. I have a BB Edit license and I keep it up to date, but I use Text Wrangler. My old OS 10, my Mac Pro, the trash can Mac, which is just was a doorstop for so long, is now I'm running OS 10 server on it, using it as a server, and I just put Text Wrangler on there to edit the configuration files, and it's just awesome. It's just great. It didn't cost me anything.
It's a good use for it.
Yeah, thank you, Rich, for doing that. Any picks? Anything you're excited about these days?
Oh my goodness, there's a lot of stuff going on.
What's your favorite African parrot? No.
Yeah, I don't pick favorites. Hear me.
Not when they're close enough to hear you.
So I mentioned the Ring, which is a smart doorbell, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it before.
We should mention, disclaimer up front, they're a sponsor. Continue on.
Oh,
anything you say will be more than welcome.
Well,
they're not a sponsor in this particular episode, so it's okay.
We got one without specific expectations, but it looked interesting. It's like, hey, this is kind of neat. If you push the button and ring the bell, we can get a picture, and it turns out to have been quite useful.
Yeah.
Somebody comes to the door and walks away and doesn't ring the bell or pulls into the driveway, we can say, oh, well, let's see what happened here. So that's been very handy. And as I said,
do you have teenagers?
Yes.
So that's
with a tone of voice that can only be used for asking an adult if they have teenagers.
One of the great things is to be able to say, no, honey, you came home at 3 a.m. and that kiss was more than 20 seconds. I have video. Incredibly valuable. I'm going to stop right there.
There's a non-technical hardware device that I'm eagerly anticipating. I have it on order. It's called a jack point.
What's that?
And it's a pair of jack stands for your car.
This is fine. You can talk about anything you want, and I'm thrilled. This is good.
In season, I do autocross and high performance driving school, and
I didn't know that.
And so once a month, typically, I swap my wheels between something that's good for the street and something that's good for the track. And there you go, jackststands.com. And the engineering is really clever. They're very wide, so they're super stable. But you slide the jack under it and slide the stand under the car. You jack the car up using the plate there.
Is that safer than just having it on the jack point that's built into the car?
Yeah. You never want to work on a car that's up on a jack.
I guess you're right. That's scary.
You always put it on jack stands, and these are just so much easier to work with than a standard jack stand. So
Jay Leno uses them. They must be good.
He knows his cars.
He knows his cars. Yeah,
it's for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Jack stands. See, I just want to reassure you, Rich, the best things on the picks on this show are the things that you're the most passionate about. I bought the 1, 2, 3 blocks that Andy recommended, and I'm just loving them. So this is completely appropriate. Jack stands. Jackpointjackstands.com. Rene Ritchie are in the dark at the Marriott.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's ready for nap time. I hope you get a little rest, a little reprieve.
So a lot of developers keep saying no sleep till dub-dub, but I feel like if it's actually no sleep at dub-dub is probably the more germane of those sayings.
Well, I hope you get some rest, but I think it's fun what you're doing, right?
Oh no, it is absolutely the best time of the year. It's just there's so many people. There's no Macworld anymore. So Jason Snell did a wonderful article for iMore on this, I think a year ago, where he said WWDC has become in many ways the new center of Apple community. And Apple this year, to their credit, I mean, in previous years they tried to block things like AltConf, and this year it's on the Apple developer page, along with they had Our Party, the talk show, AltConf Layers, which is a designer workshop by Jesse Char that's happening at the same time as WWDC, and Apple's not only not interfering with them but promoting them. So it really is. There's just people here who don't have tickets who are just here to to go to the bars or go to the restaurants or just network. And there's people at the alternative like AltConf. It's phenomenal.
What do you got for us? Anything to pick?
So I stole this from Andy, and he's an incredible gentleman for letting me do it. But there's this wonderful group of developers called the Icon Factory, Craig Hockenberry, Gideon Mejia, and team. And they're famous, of course, for Twitterific. Yeah. I believe they just did the emoji for Messenger. I mean, they've done icons for Windows. They are. One day when emoji actually becomes the language again, when it replaces, we go back to pictographs, or when Starfleet happens and they have Starfleet emoji, I'm guessing it's going to be based on Icon Factory work. They're just phenomenal. And they've made a new app just for fun. It's called BitCam. I'm going to flip it around to the selfie cam just so that you guys can see it forward facing. So here is BitCam. What it does is it makes sort of, I forget the right word for it, but it's a dithered image. And it just, it creates this old effect. And they have a delightful sort of a mechanism in here. You have super resolution, you have standard resolution. I'm going to turn it to fat bits for a second so you can see
this is awesome.
What it sort of looks like.
This is a blast from the past.
And there's an in-app purchase to install the color graphics card. Otherwise, you start off with black and white. And for a couple bucks, you get to install the color graphics option, and then also the Instaphoto size. And they have a beautiful website that's set up that looks like a retro website, complete with little construction dude at the bottom, and everything is laid out. And there's Craig Hockenberry himself. The whole layout and everything is so whimsical. It feels like a palate cleanser app from them, that they wanted to do this just for them and just for fun. And I got to talk to Craig about it a little bit last night as he was towering over the rest of us at the party. And his eyes just light up when he talks about it. And I know Ged is over the moon. Gideon Mejia, one of the other founders, is just over the moon with it. But it is so much fun. And they just you could do this really wrong and end up with complete garbage for images. And they did it really, really right. And you see it. I've seen some of Andy's. I've seen some of my friends. They create a really, really great look. So if you're bored with the normal online picture, if your Instagrams are sort of Insta-Knots and you want to get them back to Insta-Hots, if you want to just have playful photos to share with people, it's worth it. It's a moment of delight. It is something that makes you feel so good that you have the app installed. And that to me we're in the era of pop apps. It's really, really hard to get an app out there. They announced, 2 million apps yesterday, and standing out is hard. And if you can just give somebody that really great connection and great feeling, then it's really worthwhile. And they nailed it.
Here's Jason Snell and a 1-bit dithered image.
1-bit Snell.
I think most of us learn about this because on Instagram, suddenly, like, all of our friends started posting these weird-looking pictures. And then, so starting with the people who were in on the beta, and then when it got released, it was like a spreading infection.
There's also a side benefit if you go to the website for Icon Factory, iconfactory.com/bc.html. You can, if you never got the animated GIF made with Macintosh, you can download it, steal it from the page. Because everybody should have that on their website.
And if you miss having the little little animated construction worker, you can grab him
and the
again
little guy,
for your GeoCities
under construction.
reboot.
Yeah.
I just want to find out how to join that cool web ring thing they set up.
Oh, they got a web ring.
Okay.
Man, memories.
I love that they're having fun doing this. That's just everything.
Yeah.
Oh, good pick. Thank you.
You know, it's the Icon Factory, and there's such great people. I just, every chance I get, I want to throw some bucks their way, and it never feels like it's enough. If you don't mind me piling on, Rene, they make an app called Xscope, Xscope, and if you're a developer and you're doing any kind of user interface layout work, it's $24, $25 on the Mac App Store. And there you go. Oh, $50 now. It doesn't matter how much it is. It's still worth it.
I used to use it for web dev all the time. It saved me $50 a day easily in the less frustration and time.
And of course,
I've had this app for a few years, and it's paid for itself. I don't know how many times over, so many times over.
And of course, they make the famous, highly recommended Twitterific.
Yes,
exactly.
As well. Yeah, good choices there. Andy, you got all your picks stolen from you, but I know you came up with something else.
I'll see. This was my plan. I knew that somebody was going to be cool enough to pick that app. I had that in my list so that in case somebody didn't, I would take it, but making it clear that please don't not pick it, because I figured that my pick was chosen as a companion to whatever person picked that other app. It's by Jixi Pig Software. It's called Dramatic Black and White. And it is an app specifically it's for iOS. It's also for the desktop. It's also for Android. It's for everybody and for Windows. It is for converting photos into black and white. It doesn't even take pictures. It only converts things into black and white. And it's so much fun to play with, even if you are a jerk like me who's like, I'm trying to create photographic art. I don't care that it's with my phone. But there's certain like Ansel Adams effects that you don't feel like you can get from Photoshop, or you can't get like from classical photos. That dramatic, boom, there are blacks, boom, there are whites, there are sumptuous detail and gray and mood. And I just spent like, I bought it while waiting for a train. I spent like an hour and 15 minutes doing nothing but processing photos that were already on my phone and taking pictures of like architects. Like that's in one of the Harvard libraries. And it's an okay picture in color, but in black and white, you look like a photographer. And it makes anything look sort of important or historical. Yes, there's I added a spotlight for the cows and a spotlight for the actual text, and now it looks like something that could be on a U.S. postage stamp instead of just a fun tourist picture that I took. But more than anything else, it really not only can it make really beautiful pictures, but it's just fun to work with, to see what can I make from this photo that I already have, and it underscores how important phone photography is, because each one of these little apps is kind of like buying a specialty lens or a specialty kind of film for your camera. You can get a kind of shot and get a kind of image that you couldn't imagine before, and it gives you the fun of making art and figuring out how the best way to communicate through a picture is. Just fun. $2 give them the money. $2.
Well, but you may end up more, because I'm looking at all the apps they make, and there's a ton of different filter apps.
I wound up buying a whole bunch of them. I think I bought Impresso as well. I can give you a link to my Instagram, but it's a really good like real art, like oil painting filter.
I want all of these.
Yeah, they all use the same really nifty interface. Both on iOS and on Android. That's really clear and real efficient. It doesn't try to be, please stop using every other social media app and camera capture app and every editing app, because we're trying to replace every decision you've ever made. It really is, we are giving you an app that lets you convert things to black and white or give you this cartoon effect. We will make it as powerful and easy to use as possible, but we are okay with integrating it to whatever else you're doing.
It really shows you that computational photography is just massive. I mean, and it's why you want to start. Look at this. You can turn your photo into a folded piece of paper, which is hysterical. Which is why I think the future of photography is on devices like the iPhone. It's on computational devices. It's really amazing. There we go. Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Rene. Thank you, Mr. Bird, and whoever that human is with him. Rich Siegel from Barebones Software. We thank you all for being here. It was a lot of fun, and there's still a lot more to talk about. We'll just defer it to next week. We'll have another jam-packed episode of MacBreak Weekly all about Siri and HomeKit and the things we didn't get to today. You can watch our live coverage of the keynote. That's up on the Twit Live specials at twit.tv/specials or your podcast client. And, of course, you can watch this show every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1800 UTC, twit.tv/MBW. If you can't be here in person, you can download audio and video after the fact or use your favorite podcatcher like Overcast or Stitcher or even the Twit apps. We've got lots of them on every platform, too. Make sure you get every episode. You don't want to miss a one. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Now get back to work, because you know what? I'm sad to say, break time is over. Thank you, everybody.